across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. There's loads to talk about this Tuesday afternoon, including the teacher banned from teaching after telling a Muslim child that Britain is a Christian country. Well, factually it is, and this is yet another example of the fact that when we tell facts, when we talk about things that are absolutely factually true, for example, a man is a man, a woman is a woman, Britain is a Christian country, for example, we're often slapped down as a result of this, as the post-truth world in which we exist, the gaslighting from so many of those in authority. I'll talk as well this afternoon, I want to talk to you as well about the full footage of the Afghan asylum seeker attackers. They were sentenced yesterday to about 10 years each. This is by a schoolgirl rape victim. Apparently it would start a riot if the public saw it. It is awful, it is dreadful that these things are happening. Also, the mask madness is back from the government. They're saying that there's flu vaccination warning, London hospitalisations triple, schools shut amid a super flu outbreak. There are lots of people who have the flu, but wearing a mask isn't going to make you get the flu or not get the flu. It is a nonsense to wear those masks. We'll be talking to Carol Sikora about that later on, Professor Carol Sikora. We'll talk about MI5 as well, covering up what happened, the truth over the steak knife spy. This is during the Northern Ireland Troubles, and the fact that there was an IRA spy who was brought out of the country, for example, so he couldn't be arrested. He was a murderer. He was protected by the state. All of these things have come out today in a big report. Labour says take a week off work if your distant uncle dies. We spoke yesterday a lot on Drive, actually, to a number of people who run small businesses. I'd love to hear from those people. Again, we'll talk to one a little bit later on, a businessman in Bedford. But there are so many people who are trying really hard to earn an honest crust and to try to get through the quagmire of taxes, regulation, national insurance contributions, and all the rest that Rachel Reeves is stacking the odds against small businesses. If you're someone who runs a small business, like the people I spoke to yesterday, do give me a shout, because I want to hear what you think of the Labour government saying that people can take a week off work if a distant relative dies. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about Sadiq Khan as well. A report says that he should be stripped of the power to run the Met. We'll look inside the Sun and see what they're doing. There's so much to talk about today on Drive, and I want to make sure that you get your voice and your points across. As always, on every single show I do, I will take as many calls as I can, as many voice notes, texts and tweets. The ways to get in touch are as follows. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Let's get started here on Talk Drive. Well, thank you so much to everyone who has been in touch, and we will get to all your messages and calls, so many of them coming in already. Keep them coming in, 0344 499 1000. I want to talk now about the teacher who's been banned from teaching after telling a Muslim child that Britain is a Christian country. This is absolutely outrageous. The primary school teacher was referred to his local child protection board over comments made to the pupil at a school in London. A senior detective from the Metropolitan Police's child abuse investigation team also became involved. He allegedly admonished students for washing their feet in the sinks in boys' lavatories. Police were called in to investigate an alleged hate crime. I mean, that is just not a hygienic thing to do. It was claimed he reminded the children that Islam remained a minority religion in the UK. That is factual. That is the case. That is the truth. That is objective truth. Yet this person was removed from working with children. This is an absolutely outrageous case, and it is yet more evidence of the fact that political correctness is taking over this country. The woke madness at the heart of the education profession. Chris McGovern is chairman of the Campaign for Real Education, a retired head teacher, former advisor at 10 Downing Street. Chris, what do you make of this?
Well, I won't say I'm alarmed, because I've been alarmed for a very long time. Obviously, it's worrying, and it's very sinister, because we have an established church in this country. It's the Church of England. We are a Christian country, and we have a king who's head of that church. But what this reminded me of, Peter, is my own situation some years ago when I lost my job because I criticised a model exam question which asked children to imagine they were members of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and to explain or to give a reason why they massacred the athletes at the Olympic Games and why they blew up aircraft and so forth. I criticised that. And even though I had, Margaret Thatcher on side and so forth, it didn't stop me from losing my job in the state sector when I moved into the independent sector. So I sympathise with this, but I would say it is nothing new. It's a growing cancer in our education system. The education system has been taken over, has been captured. There are certain things you may say, and there are certain things you may not say. And you may not say that the Church of England or the Christian faith is the established faith in our country, which is sinister. And I think MPs and Parliament and governors need to get involved in this. But they lack the backbone. They lack the nerve to actually challenge people who are saying, you can't say that. You can't say that we are a Christian civilization. So how would I feel? I'm appalled but not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I can totally see where you're coming from. And his legal claim, the teacher's legal claim against the local authority, hasn't been named, by the way. He doesn't want his identity to become public. And you can understand why, especially when you look at what happened to that teacher at the Batley Grammar School, who still remains in hiding. Lawyers for the teacher pointed out the school was a non-faith school. Prayers had been informally banned from the playground, and by extension that included washing feet in the sinks, confined to a prayer room set aside for the purpose. So it wasn't as if Muslim children weren't allowed to pray. Of course they were allowed to pray. There was a room for them in order to do that. People who observe the Islamic faith seriously pray 5 times a day, and that's fine if they want to do that. But the school suspended the teacher in March last year, subsequently sacking him. In April last year, he was informed he was being referred to the Safeguarding Board as well as to the Metropolitan Police. The police inquiry was subsequently dropped. I mean, this is just yet another example, Chris, of massive overreach of authorities that don't know how to deal with something reasonably and in a common sense way. And I think, as the home of common sense, as a station where there are so many people who have common sense, who ring in, who text in, who let me know what they think every single day, they will be absolutely appalled to hear this story, where not only is someone being victimised here, but common sense is just not being used.
It is blatant victimisation. But also, Peter, what worries me here is incredibly divisive, because the majority of people in this country, and I suspect probably the majority of Muslims, will also be very offended by what's going on here. So it divides our country. And it means also that, the other teachers will be afraid now in the classroom to say certain things. It's not just this one case. It has a knock-on effect. Yep. You may say this, you may not say that. And as you say, there have been other cases where teachers have stepped out of line. Catherine Birbal-Singh, her teacher in Brent, she actually stopped religious activities of all sorts in her school and won the case.
She's a total hero, by the way.
Great school. It's a great school. But head teachers need to be supported by local authorities and by the police. It seems perfectly okay, perfectly legitimate to say to any pupil that the religion in this country, the established religion by law, is the Church of England. That's just a fact, as you've said. Yeah. We respect our Muslim brothers and sisters, of course we do, but they are not the established religion, and this is going to divide our society. People are going to be upset and they're going to be angry, and that's bad. So these fools who are making these decisions need to understand what are the implications of this judgment. Most people will support the teacher. It's outrageous.
It's also a complete bastardization of what safeguarding boards are for. They were set up in 2004 in the wake of the murders of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. We remember those disgusting and horrific murders by Ian Huntley, the school caretaker. They're intended to protect children from dangers posed by adults working around them, and that is absolutely fine, and that's what schools need to do. There need to be safeguarding aspects if you're working with children, but as we've seen in so many different occasions, this one and one we were talking about yesterday, we see this vast overreach as well, and nobody's reining this in, are they, Chris? There's no leadership here from the top saying, for goodness sake, apply some common sense here, work this out and say, look, they weren't happy with what you said, you perhaps shouldn't have said it, but there's no reason why you shouldn't. I can't think of any reason why you wouldn't say Britain is a Christian country. It is a Christian country. We have strong Judeo-Christian values that have established this country. We have an established church. We have an Archbishop of Canterbury. The monarch, for goodness sake, is head of the Church of England. That is a fact and has been for literally over 500 years. Yet we're in a situation here where the Free Speech Union has had to say, Lord Young, the director of the Free Speech Union, says this teacher lost his job and almost ended up being barred from the profession for life just because he pointed out to a class of Muslim school children that the national religion of England is Anglicanism. Things have reached a pretty pass in this country. If a teacher can be branded a safeguarding risk because he says something that is incontestably true, if he'd claimed that Islam is the official religion of England, even though that's not true, I doubt he would have got into any trouble. And that is the case, Chris.
It is the case. And, a good teacher would explain to children that actually Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are Abrahamic faiths. They have a common core, and there are things in common. But this country certainly, children need to understand this. It is Christian. Western Europe is Christian, and our culture, our religions, our music, our literature is defined by Christianity. That's just a simple fact. Yeah. And teachers should be feeling free to educate children along that pathway, but they're going to be scared. I mean, if you're a teacher now and you think I might lose my job if I step out of line, you mentioned the teacher in Yorkshire who had to go into hiding. Yep. You're going to be very, very fearful, and having an atmosphere of fear in the classroom will put a lot of people off.
And this is the problem, Chris. This is the problem, because there'll be so many people watching and listening out there who will say you can't say anything anymore, and I always say you can say basically whatever you want within the law. Free speech within the law is the law of this country, and that's the way things should be. But the point is that people will self-censor. People will say, okay, here is a fact, but for example, Britain is a Christian country, but I'm not going to state it. I'm not going to state it. I'm not going to say that because I don't know what's going to happen to me. If you look at what happened to this teacher, 3 children filed written complaints against him. 9 people examined them, including the local safeguarding officer, a detective sergeant from the child abuse investigation team. Stating facts to a child is apparently worthy of investigation by a detective sergeant, a senior officer from the child abuse investigation team, 2 social workers, an HR advisor, and the school's head teacher. The children claimed they were upset and scared by the teacher's outburst, and they then shouted at them. Ooh, a teacher shouts at you. That's what happens in schools.
Yeah, and I think probably the parents would have put up the children to write these letters. Look, we have to expect leadership from the government. We have a decent, I think, Home Secretary. She's from my area, Lady Wood in Birmingham. I think she's a Muslim, but she needs to get a grip on this. We desperately need some leadership, political leadership, to say this is far enough. Teachers have got to feel back, but they don't. They feel scared, and the politicians are scared. We've got to stop being scared and stand up for the good things in this country. It includes toleration and understanding, but it doesn't include obliterating our identity. And this is what's going on here, an atmosphere of a culture of fear and intimidation in our classroom. It's disastrous and will put many people off going into teaching. So you're right to raise the issue. It's an important issue. We desperately need politicians to give us some leadership and to show some backbone.
Thank you, Chris. I agree with every word you've said. Chris McGovern is the chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. He's a retired head teacher himself and a former advisor at 10 Downing Street. What do you think about this? I just think it is just nonsense. It's an affront to our way of life. It's an affront to common sense. It's an affront to our country. It is an affront to education and what education should be in this country. When you have a situation where a teacher is admonished, banned from being around children, and investigated by 9 separate people, including a detective sergeant from a child abuse investigation team. I tell you something, there's a load of child abuse in this country that should be being investigated. There's a load of child abuse that an inquiry at long last, which the government was dragged kicking and screaming into actually setting up. They finally got a chairwoman for that. We're going to talk about that later in the day. Maybe if you care about child abuse, you should be focusing on that. You should be focusing on what is happening right now to children who are being raped by adults, instead of persecuting someone who states facts. What do you think about this? I'd love to hear your views on this afternoon. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We're going to talk in just a second about, these major issues, the challenges to our society and the challenges to our way of life as well, to the common sense that runs through the veins of every viewer and listener of Talk. a vigilante group being formed as a UK town braces for over 500 illegal migrants in a local barracks. I absolutely do not want people to become vigilantes. I do not want people to take the law into their own hands. If people are going to protest, I want them to be peaceful, like the vast majority of the protests in Epping, for example. Some of them, there were some arrests there, and some of it got out of hand, but the vast majority of it was just concerned local citizens acting completely peacefully. Also, we're told the full footage captured of the Afghan asylum seeker attackers by a schoolgirl rape victim would start a riot if the public saw it, according to their own lawyers. Also, a Pakistani influencer who supports jihad and says the Jews run the media. Yeah, where have I heard that from before? A lot of anti-Semites. Well, he is going to meet children on a UK tour and influence them. So he's okay to influence our kids, but someone who states facts about the fact that we're a Christian country is not. Britain 2025. Stay with us here on Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, Talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. I've just been looking at my tweets during the break as well. You can tweet me at talkTV or follow me at Peter Cardwell. Bob says, please name the school and get the parents on. Bob, I don't know the name of the school. The teacher hasn't made his identity public, and you can totally understand why that's the case. That's Bob in Surrey there, and thank you for your message, Bob. And listen, I'd love to talk to the parents, I'd love to talk to the pupils, I'd love to talk to the teacher, but unsurprisingly, given what happened at the Batley Grammar School, where the teacher was talking about the cartoons of Muhammad, for example, I mean, he's still in hiding. He is still in hiding as a result of that, as a result of the big protest that happened there. Betty's been in touch and says, watch, his name will be leaked out to shut him up and his lawsuit's cancelled. The UK is completely infiltrated, in Betty's opinion. If it was any other religion or cause, there would be a national uprising. Can you imagine if IRA history and Catholicism was being pushed and treated in the same way? Well, we're actually going to talk about IRA history a little bit later on with the steak knife inquiry, absolutely shameful actions of MI5 trying to cover that up. That was a spy who was run by MI5, and in fact, he saved some lives, but he took many, many other lives. Absolutely horrendous case. Dawn says, when I worked for a local council, I attended meetings with other agencies. A woman from education told me that our council leaflets should be in 81 languages to be inclusive. Amanda says, I can't get my head around the bizarre fact that as a Christian country, it now seems to be frowned upon to say the word Christmas. Anyone offended by that has no business living in this country and should be ashamed of themselves. Amanda, I have absolutely no problem with talking about what happens on the 25th of December. It is called Christmas. It is because Jesus Christ was born that day. That's the point. Anybody says happy holidays or season's greetings, say to them, why are you saying that? The name of the festival is Christmas. You don't talk about Diwali being a different, a different name. We don't talk about Eid or Hanukkah having different names. They don't have different names because that's the name of the festival. That's the point. Ditto anyone who writes Xmas just annoys me completely. It is about Jesus Christ. That's the point, and I speak as an agnostic. I want to talk now to Danny Shaw, the police and crime and justice commentator and former advisor to Yvette Cooper, who's with me now. Danny, quite a number of home affairs stories around today, especially in regard to Crowborough and what is happening there. Can you just bring us up to date, especially as 500 illegal migrants may well be housed in a local barracks?
Yeah, well, the government is trying to clear asylum hotels. They've got this promise that there won't be any more asylum hotels by the end of the Parliament, which is sort of middle of 2029. Pretty tall order at the moment, 36,000 asylum seekers in around 200 hotels. One of the ways they want to do it is by opening military sites to accommodate migrants. And one of the areas they've chosen is this barracks in Crowborough in Sussex. And it's not gone down very well with the people who live there, who believe it's completely unsuitable, and a group is forming who will conduct patrols when asylum seekers arrive there to try and stop any crime and to try and keep the peace. That's essentially what's happening. And obviously lots of demonstrations going on in the area. I mean, I think that the difficulty is there's no sort of easy answer to this problem, and there's no perfect site or perfect area to house migrants or asylum seekers. And I really sympathise with the people of Crowborough. It's not ideal for them, but equally, every single area could probably make similar arguments. So where do you put people? I mean, well, surely it's better to have them on a military base than probably in a hotel.
There are political parties, of course, who say that people who arrive should be turned around immediately and sent away. The practicality of that, if something is very, very difficult, but we'll see what happens politically in all of that. We also had the story yesterday, Danny, I'm sure you were following it as well, about the £1 billion that this procurement and building project that seems to have got completely out of control. Just remind us about that.
Is that about the immigration centres?
Yes.
Well, this is 2 immigration centres, Harmondsworth and Coombe, which form what's known as the Heathrow Immigration Removal Centre, and the contract is sort of being put out for bidding for about £1 billion over 10 years, so £100 million a year. I think it starts in 2027 or 2028.
You're right, and just within that, Danny, I wonder, what level of confidence should we be having in the Labour government to solve this crisis if they're saying this is a 10-year project, it's going to be there for 10 years and we're spending £1 billion on it? Now, if you're holding and deporting people, well, that's the way in which they want to move, and deporting people is a good thing as far as I'm concerned if they're here illegally and if their asylum claim has been rejected. But the point is, a lot of people will look at this and say, well, actually, will Labour, are they simply saying this is going to be a problem for certain for the next 10 years?
There aren't very many immigration removal centres and places to detain people pending their removal. I think it's about 2,000, 2,500. So there's no way that you're ever going to need fewer spaces, to be honest, Peter. You're always going to need around about 2,000 spaces. Combrook and Harmsworth are two big centres. They're near Heathrow. I think it's about 900 places in total. So I would have thought it makes perfect sense to keep those two centres. And to try and contract them out to the best, the lowest bidder who can provide appropriate accommodation and facilities and so on. Now, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like quite a lot of money to me. I think the previous contract was about 54, 55 million pounds a year. This has jumped to 100 million. Is that just a sort of a starting point, or is that realistically how much they're going to have to pay?
20 times the figure you've just mentioned there. We brought our viewers and listeners the breaking news here on Talk Drive yesterday that two Afghans, asylum seekers, 17-year-olds, who arrived only months earlier in small boats, assaulted and raped a 15-year-old girl in a park on the 10th of May. They were jailed yesterday for given sentences of around 10 years each. Now we're being told that the footage that she filmed herself was so horrific that her lawyers feared it would cause riots if it went public. Another disturbing indictment of what has happened here, Danny.
Oh, it's an absolutely terrible case. It's shocking. These two young people seeking sanctuary in the UK, apparently fleeing the Taliban in Afghanistan, come to Britain, and within months they've raped a 15-year-old girl. It's shocking beyond words, and you only have to sort of read the statement, the victim impact statement from the girl and her family about the effect that it's had on her, and you can only imagine the impact that it's going to have. That tells you as much about the case that I think, the footage would be shocking if it was shown in its entirety. I personally not sure I'm convinced of the argument for that, because once it's out there, it'll be there forever. And there's a victim at the centre of this who we hope will be able eventually to rebuild her life. And I'm not sure having footage of the incident is going to assist that process.
Yeah, I don't want to see that myself. I do want them to rot in jail. That is absolutely what should happen. Tell us about this Pakistani influencer who said all Muslims should go to Palestine or the Palestinian territories for jihad, set to begin his UK speaking tour. He said Israelis and Jews are controlling the whole world through interest-based finance, and repeated racist conspiracies about Jewish people controlling the media. Why on earth is he being allowed into our country to spread
Well, that's a really good question. I think it needs to be addressed to the Home Office. This is Tuaha ibn Jalil. And he runs a Muslim youth organisation in Pakistan. He has apparently millions of followers on YouTube, social media and so on. And he's got this tour in the UK, and he's talked about Israelis and Jews are controlling the whole world through finance. The Jews control the media. And he apparently said all Muslims should go to Pakistan for jihad, holy war. So, there may be other statements that he's made as well amongst all that. Yeah. But who is doing the sort of the process of checking some of these people?
I mean, we're in this absolutely bizarre situation today, Danny. I don't expect you to be across the details of the other story I'm about to mention. We're in this bizarre situation where a teacher's been banned from teaching for telling a Muslim child that Britain is a Christian country, yet we have someone who we are apparently welcoming to our shores who wants to influence young people and spill out this vile hatred and is being allowed to come here. Many people will say that is an absolute aberration to our way of life and just a complete slap on the face for those who believe in common sense.
Well, I just hope that if he is in the country and there's nothing to stop barring him, that very close monitoring will be taking place of the speeches and the sermons and the talks that he's given, and that if there's any suggestion that he's breaking the law in terms of inciting racial hatred or religious hatred or anything else like that, that he will be arrested.
Should be turned back at Heathrow if you ask me. Danny, thank you very much indeed for your contribution today. Danny Shaw, their police and crime and justice commentator, former advisor to Yvette Cooper, the former Home Secretary there as well. Darryl in Lincoln has been in touch and says Peter lived in Saudi, Egypt and Morocco, have travelled in Afghanistan and Yemen and a few Islamic countries, and one thing they all have in common is that When you're there, you live by their rules and accept their culture. There's no compromise. It's their way or the highway. And that is where our country has failed. We try to appease everyone in some weird attempt to look great on the world stage. We, in fact, look weak and pathetic to the rest of the world. Darryl, I totally agree with you. I'm all for tolerance. I'm not for acceptance. I'm not for saying your way of life should be incorporated into our way of life. We have British values. We have family values. We have common sense in this country. And if you don't ascribe to that, well then you should, or else you should sling your hook, because that is exactly what happens in other countries, and certainly countries I've travelled in. I've travelled in not to those countries that you mentioned, but I've certainly travelled to quite a number of countries, and I would never dream of not carrying out the customs or observing what needs to be observed to make sure that I am fitting in and that I'm respecting that country's values. But apparently here, it's fine. It's a free-for-all. It is absolute nonsense. Robbie has been in touch as well and says, let me predict the grooming gang inquiry lead by Anne Longfield. She's the former Children's Commissioner who has just been announced as the new chairwoman of the rape gang inquiry. She will never expose a Labour cover-up. We'll be lucky if it even says Pakistani grooming gang once. Maggie Oliver must head this inquiry. As a good copper, she will go wherever the evidence takes her, and it means not only hounding the rapists themselves. Maggie would also look at where the political motives for refusing a public inquiry, whilst also looking into why Labour refused an inquiry. Why Jess Phillips didn't come out on day one of a Labour government demanding an inquiry, but instead she kept quiet for 9 months, towing the party line of we don't need an inquiry. Shame on her, says Robbie. Robbie, I totally agree with what you say, and the point I would make about Jess Phillips, who is someone who campaigned for a long time for victims of rape gangs. Why does the Home Office, first of all, institutionally, but secondly, you as a politician, from flipping day one, on day one, you say, you know who I am, you have prepared for all of this, you've been really, really clear in what she wants, we're having an inquiry, it's happening on day one, this is priority number one, we're sorting it out. That's what we're doing on day one. Instead, they were dragged, as Robbie correctly says, kicking and screaming into actually doing an inquiry. It is disgraceful, and I think Jess Phillips has a lot of a case to answer. I also think, I mean, a big question I'd love the answer to. What did Yvette Cooper actually do as Home Secretary? She was there for, you know, about a year and a half. What did she actually do? What did she change? What was different at the end of her time as Home Secretary? Because Shabana Mahmood, you may love her, you may hate her, you may think she's a dreadful Home Secretary, but she's actually doing stuff, or at least saying she's doing stuff. I'm not sure Yvette Cooper did very much of that at all. We will take your calls in just a minute. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch. I've just been looking through my tweets there. They're coming in thick and fast. Lee H says, we all know why the teacher was admonished. Parties of all colours have made any criticism of Islam or Muslims into Islamophobia. It is used to shut down anything they don't agree with. Wayne has been in touch with a voice note on this as well. Keep your voice notes coming in. You do them through WhatsApp. Dead easy. Same way you send a voice note to anybody else. Wayne has sent one to me on 0344 499 1000. This is what Wayne says.
So, it seems we now live in a world where thoughts and feelings supersede laws, facts, history and work ethic. I tell you what, I identify, Peter, as the Prime Minister. And because I feel I identify as a Prime Minister, that must make me the Prime Minister. So that means that I'm going to go down to number 10 and say, oi, 2 tier 3 gear, Keir, never here, always on the plane, see you later, take your gear with you. I'm going to run the country because I identify as a Prime Minister. And this is literally what people are saying. I don't know, mate. I'm lost.
Wayne, I'm laughing, but it's also true. Everything you're saying is true. I mean, I identify as, you know, a 6'4" Hollywood hunk with a six-pack who's, 4 stone lighter than I am. Doesn't mean that's actually true. Doesn't mean that is a fact. And Wayne puts it so well. Paul is in Manchester. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Paul, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good afternoon, Peter. What is it? It's about respect and our country still being Christian. I've been all over the world with my wife, and we've respected that country's beliefs, the religion, their ethics, everything. I've always believed in that. Me and my wife went to Greece once, and we went in this Greek Orthodox church, and she had a T-shirt on, my wife, and her shoulders were bare, and when we went in the church, she had to cover her shoulders up with this veil because they wouldn't allow people to show, well, ladies in particular, to show the shoulders. And my wife put this black veil over her shoulders, and we really enjoyed it.
But you did exactly, Paul, you did exactly the right thing there. You didn't want to offend anybody. You didn't want to, you wanted to enjoy that lovely place that you were. You wanted to fit in with the customs. I mean, I've been in a situation where I was near a very holy site in the Middle East of Islam, for example, in Jerusalem, and they told us, you've got to keep walking. You can't stop. You've got to keep walking, and if you even slow down, these people will be offended because for them this is a very, very holy site, and you can't sort of gawk at it. You've got to look at it, but keep walking. That was fine. I did that. That's okay. That's what I did. I've taken part in religious ceremonies where I've been in a Catholic church, for example. I'm not Catholic. I've obviously observed everything they've asked me to observe. That's what you do. But when people come to our country, they should observe the values, the clear values, the family values, and the common sense that is at the absolute heart of what it is to be British, Paul.
Yeah, of course, I understand that 100%. I mean, I'm not Christian myself, Peter, but I believe in the values. And when people are calling Christmas, or not calling it Christmas, then it's just changing the values that I've been brought up to believe in.
Totally agree with you. Listen, thank you for that, Paul. Much appreciated. Paul in Manchester there. Give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Mark's in Lincolnshire and has some thoughts on this as well. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi there, Peter.
Hi.
Hi there. I mean, basically, going on from your last caller there, really, who said, he believes in the values of the country and all the rest of it, and obviously in relation, I guess, to the Christian root of the country. But, isn't Christian himself, etc. I mean, for me, let's be quite honest about this. Let's be grown-ups about this. For the vast majority of people in this country, they're not really celebrating Christmas for Christ.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Totally get that.
They're celebrating Christmas for Santa Claus. Because that's all it really is to a lot of people.
And I get that, Mark, and I sympathise with that, and I know for you as someone who has a very strong faith that must be frustrating. But I suppose the wider point, and I wonder, and if you disagree with this, that's absolutely fine, but I think the wider point is that the religion of Christianity informs the values of this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, structurally, we are a Christian country. It's throughout our laws, it's throughout our state, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I get that. But my point on this and my argument with this is always going to be the same, really. That I genuinely believe that unless there are sufficient people following Christ, then you will lose it, basically. Okay. You will allow other ideologies, other faiths, other religions, whatever, to come in and take its place, which is exactly what's happening. And I've had this discussion, with other people, and if you're going to constantly go on about cultural Christianity, well, that culture disappears, doesn't it? Because you're no longer having hymns in schools. You're no longer having, people speaking openly about God. You're no longer having people professing their faith in Christ, etc. So, for a lot of these people that will consider, themselves culturally Christian, they'll be the same people who will, let's say they're out in the street and somebody's street preaching, will kind of view that as a God botherer or something along those lines.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it goes a little bit beyond frustration for myself.
I can understand that, Mark. I can understand that.
I would love everybody to come back to Christ that loves our Christian country. However, I can't force them to do that. They have to do that with their own heart.
Sure.
So it's like, well, you can't really... I get where people are coming from, I really do, but you can't really complain about it, to an extent, because if you're going to be celebrating it and observing it as a happy holidays, then that's what it will become, and that's exactly what's been happening.
Okay.
Well,
Mark, listen, I think you make your points well there, Mark, and thanks very much for them, and a very happy Christmas to you if we're not talking between now and Christmas, which I suspect we may well do. Dave is in West Sussex and has given me a shout about what's happening in Crowborough and the fact that there are 500 illegal migrants who may well be on a military base there. We're talking about that story as well today. Dave, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yes, good afternoon to you. Look, we've got English embassies in Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan. Those are the property. That's English territory. Under this European Act of 1950, whatever it is, if we're supposed to be taking them into our land, we could actually put those immigrants in that country whilst their process applications being seeking asylum, in that land, not here in England, and you could actually technically be okay with the law on that.
I'm not sure you're right, Dave. I'm not sure you can repatriate people simply. I mean, if they're claiming asylum, do we not have to work out whether they actually are reasonably asylum seekers or not, or should we just send them all back? Do you think, Dave?
Well, is at peace, which we think most of them are, and they're just using this as just an excuse to get into this country to claim benefits, as far as I can see.
Okay. Listen, thanks for your thoughts, Dave. Much appreciated. That's Dave in West Sussex there. Thank you to Damon in Wigan. He says, I've mentioned before to you, Peter, that I served in the army and the forces for years. Yeah, I remember that, Damon. However, after today and the teacher being sacked, why did I serve this country and on the British values therein? Every day I can see how this country is changing fast and all our values are being lost and put in the past. I can't believe how things have changed in the last 35 years. Thanks, Damon. Thank you to Jason from the Lake District, who's been in touch as well. He says, we've got the wrong government in power at exactly the wrong time. We're crying out for leadership and common sense. It's not asking a lot. Jason, I agree with everything you say. We're about to hear some more common sense. That is from Professor Carol Sikora, the medical director of the Rutherford Cancer Centres, because doctors are being urged to call off their strike. The NHS has issued an urgent flu vaccination warning after London hospitalisations triple and schools are shutting amid an outbreak of super flu. Number 10 is encouraging people to, guess what, wear masks. Yes, really. Stay with us here on Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Mark in Bristol, who says the communist dictatorship that's ruining our country has just voted in the Brexit betrayal bill and rejoining the EU customs union. Yet more lies from Keir Stalin and the Labour MPs. A national uprising must follow soon. Well, if it's peaceful and there's peaceful protest, that's fine. If there's anything that's violent, not happy with that. As you know, Becca says, I wish everyone would stop saying about Maggie Oliver being chairwoman of the rape inquiry. She is not impartial. She was one of the whistleblowers, so it wouldn't work, says Becca in Norfolk. P.S. Happy Xmas. No, Happy Christmas, Becca. Sorry. Sean in Bridlington says, Yvette Cooper, Ed Miliband, Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner will get at least some of what they deserve at the next election. They will all lose their seats, and good riddance to the lot of them. Well, those people, and Keir Starmer specifically, are saying that people should be wearing masks now because of the super flu that is going around. In fact, we have a message as well from Nikki in Slough, who says, I work in the care industry. Face coverings do lessen the risk of catching flu or a cold, but not COVID. There was hardly any colds or flu during COVID. We wore masks and washed our hands during sanitizer, etc. It does help. Well, I'm interested in what Professor Carol Sikora thinks of that. He's medical director of the Rutherford Cancer Centres. Carol, thank you for joining me today. I don't know about you, but my hackles rise when I hear the government telling us to wear masks. What do you think?
So do I. And also when it's couched from some apparatchik in number 10 that knows nothing about medicine or infection control.
Well, you absolutely do, Carol. So let me ask you very straightforwardly and very, very plainly, should we wear masks or not because this flu is around?
If it makes you feel better, wear them, but it's not going to help. That's the main line, the bottom line. The masks people wear, the little paper ones we all see, we saw them in COVID, are pretty useless for anything. If you feel ill, it's probably best not to go to work. If you're coughing and spluttering, best not to go on public transport, not go to work. Similarly, if you're on cancer drugs, my specialty, if you're immunocompromised for any reason, again, keep yourself away from people. But otherwise, society shouldn't stop. We made that mistake with COVID, and we don't need to do it for flu.
And we're being told, Carol, as well, that, you know, this COVID inquiry is happening. We're going to learn the lessons. I'm not sure we are, actually, because I'm not sure a lesson has been learned on masks, or the fact that doctors are saying that schools should be shutting amid the super flu outbreak. I mean, should schools be shutting? Is that a reasonable thing? Especially as so many people's mental health, their education, their development was stunted to such a huge degree during the COVID lockdowns.
I think, you know, we teach students, medical students, evidence-based medicine. Don't do interventions that have no evidence base. There is no evidence base for shutting schools at the moment. Sure, if a school is overrun, if half the teachers are off sick, you may have to do something slightly different. But there's no way to prevent pandemics to start shutting things, not for the flu. Flu is predominantly a serious illness of only older people and people with other immunocompromised. Their immune system is down. Otherwise, it's fine. The winter pressure business, Peter, is all about the incompetence of the NHS to plan for it. I've been a doctor for 50 years. Every winter, we get winter pressures coming up. They don't in France or Germany. So what's the difference? We have to learn. We have to do things differently.
Some of the headlines I've seen have been absolutely ludicrous as well, as going, you know, cases double in a week in this city. Yeah, that's how viruses work. Yeah, they generally are spread and people get it. That's what happens. I mean, there just needs to be, I just think we need to dial down the hysteria slightly on flu. It's the winter, people get flu. I don't want to get flu. What about vaccinations? What do you think?
vaccinations do work in a partial way. They're not as perfect. They're not like polio. You know, if you've had polio as a kid, you're not going to get polio.
A polio vaccination as a kid, you're not going to get polio.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the problem with flu is that it changes every year. It mutates, and it mutates even during the winter. It's very clever virus. So if you had the wrong strain put into you, then the immunization, the vaccination makers try and make the drug so it matches the current strain, but it's unpredictable business. So it's not 100% effective. But I've had my flu jab. I certainly have.
I've had mine too, actually. I am. You mentioned people who are immunosuppressed. I have a sort of tedious health condition I'll not go into. It's all about grizzly, actually. And I get my flu shot every year, and I get COVID shots as well, boosters and so on, which some people disagree with. I have one particular friend who thinks it's silly that I do so, but it's my decision and my body. And certainly when there are people who don't want those things, that's up to them. That's entirely up to them, and always should be up to them. And I always support people. I think it's a disgrace, the care workers, for example, whose jobs were taken away from them because they wouldn't get a COVID vaccine. I wonder what you make just in regard to the mask issue, about Downing Street spokesman saying there's long-standing guidance in place for people on a range of measures they can consider taking to help limit the spread of winter bugs if they have flu-like symptoms. This is neither a new nor an instruction, but simply people can consider, and it was a long-standing position. On Tuesday, an NHS boss said that people should wear a mask in the office or if they had cold or flu-like symptoms. This is Daniel Elkes, who is the Chief Executive of NHS Providers, represents hospital trusts, get back in the habit of mask wearing, such as during the COVID pandemic. I mean, this just really concerns me, that this nonsense is being spread by people. I mean, there'll be loads of people who say, well, the Chief Executive of NHS Providers says I should wear a mask, therefore I should do it.
He's a highly paid bureaucrat in the NHS, for goodness sake. What does he know? If it was the head of infection control at one of the big hospitals here, I'd listen to him and I'd take a bit of note. But for some bureaucrat to start splashing out, bringing the fear back with masks and so on, I remember during COVID being shouted at on trains when my mask wasn't on and things like that. I mean, it was completely ridiculous, because even for that, the evidence base was so poor, and certainly for flu, it just isn't there. We've got to do.
What is it, do you think, Carol, as a medical professional of long standing, of great repute? What is it about these head teachers, for example, that are going, oh, loads of people are getting the flu, we've got to shut down the school? What is it, because of the COVID lockdowns that we simply go into this kind of weird mind attitude where we sort of go, right, we've got to have the most harsh things we can so we're seen to be doing something?
I think it's a power grab. People that are coming up with the plan that makes you do something, standing back from saying making it compulsory. Notice the number 10 is not making it compulsory, or even suggesting it would be considered to be compulsory. But it's a power grab. They're telling the masses, we have control. You are now being controlled, just like digital ID. But we won't go there. It's a separate issue. Control of populations and using the mask, which is a highly visible symbol. If it was something you had to put on your skin, like a plaster under your clothes, and no one would know, it wouldn't have that effect. But the mask is the vision of power, someone telling you to do something. And I think that's where we've got to with the psychology of the mask.
Thank you, Carol. Much appreciate your contribution to this. Professor Carol Sikora there, who is Medical Director of the Rutherford Cancer Centres. Martin's in Rotherhithe and has some thoughts on this. Martin, thanks for ringing 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say?
Evening, Peter. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Martin? Hope you're well.
Not too bad. Before I make my point, can I just wish you and your family a happy Christmas?
You can indeed, and a very happy Christmas to you, Martin.
Thank you. Every year this happens. As soon as we get to sort of December, January, all the people can come out of the woodwork talking about masks again, and it's happening again because we've got a bit of flu. And yet they just don't learn, do they? There's no evidence masks work, and it's just scaring people. I mean, the other day when I was in the supermarket, I saw a woman. Not only was she wearing a mask, she had one of those plastic visors over
for goodness sake. Oh, those visors. Don't get me started.
My heart sunk as soon as I saw that. I thought, oh my God.
Yeah. I don't want to go back to that time. I don't think we ever will, Martin, quite frankly. No, there are far too many people who were I wonder what it is, Martin. What do you think about this kind of idea that people rush to these things. They rush to say, oh, we'll put a mask on, we'll put a visor on, that'll protect me, that'll show people that I care, show people that I'm doing all I can to stop this. And it's just, a lot of it is just performative, I think. It's just putting a performance on and saying, look at me, I'm virtue signaling. I think it's part of that, Martin. What do you think?
Yeah, there is an element of that. There are some people that want to be seen to do, think they're doing the right thing, even though what they're doing, they just look stupid. But some people, as we saw sadly during the pandemic, some people just like to be controlled and like to be told what to do.
I think you're absolutely right. And that concerns me, Martin, because we know there would be people who would be rushing to do this. If it were mandatory, which it isn't, but if it were mandatory, they'd be rushing to do this, and they'd be admonishing other people not to, to do it, and judging them for not doing so.
I can remember just shortly after the pandemic came to an end. I can remember the COVID pandemic. I can remember still seeing people then wearing masks, looking at me funny on the train.
Oh, I saw a guy wearing a mask yesterday. I saw a guy walking down the street wearing a mask, like one of the little paper masks, below his nose. So even the tiny effect of it was basic. I mean, it's useless anyway, but it wasn't even covering what it was meant to cover. And I just think, get a grip, mate. I was in an office actually a few weeks ago and saw someone wearing a mask and holding a conversation with me, and this was before the flu stuff. It's crazy. Listen, Martin, thanks very much indeed, and thanks for your very kind words about Christmas, and a very happy Christmas to you and your family as well. Brian's been in touch and says, do these Labour politicians not understand that they're constantly giving the Reform Party every bit of ammunition? They need to win the next election, and I sincerely hope they do, because Labour is a complete waste of space without a backbone, and I would say the Prime Minister is even worse. That is what Brian thinks. Well, thank you for that. And Dawn in Chelmsford has been in touch as well and says, sometimes direct action is all that is left to the public if politicians ignore them. I'm not condoning vigilantes, but desperate people do desperate things. Dawn, I know what you mean, and I absolutely am in the same position. I do not condone vigilantes. I do not condone any form of violence whatsoever. There are many people who feel that is the only option open to them. It is not. If you have views on anything, I want you to tell me. I want you to use the words we have, the great English language, the great values we have here of common sense, talking to one another and thrashing these things out. We're going to do that in the last hour. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call, so I'll get as many calls, texts and tweets as I can on air in the next hour.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube. YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company here on Talk. There's so much to discuss, including the fact that government have finally, after months, got round to appointing a chairwoman for the rape gangs inquiry. We'll talk about that in just a second with one rape gang survivor, that is Samantha Smith, who'll be joining us in just a second. We're also going to be talking about Labour saying that you should take a week off work if your distant uncle dies. If a distant relative dies, take a week off work, it's fine. I don't know about you, but I've kind of noticed that there've been a few problems with the economy. Growth is an issue, productivity is an issue, and for small businesses, people turning up, doing the job and being paid a fair wage can be an issue, especially as the minimum wage has gone up. All these employers who are the backbone of our economy, spoke to a couple of them yesterday, they're trying their hardest to create wealth. They're paying tax, they're being taxed through the nose. It is ludicrous. And here we are saying, Labour say, oh, just take off loads of time. It's fine, you want to take time off? That's fine. We'll talk about the horrendous cover-up by MI5 in regard to Steak-Knife, one of the highest ranking spies in the IRA. We'll talk about that and the sport this hour as well. Also calls for Sadiq Khan to be stripped of his power to run the Metropolitan Police. That's coming up as well. So much to discuss here on Talk. I want to make you part of the conversation. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk. And just to let you know, I will be with Julia tomorrow for Prime Minister's Questions at 12 o'clock, as usual, every Wednesday. Julia presents, of course, during that time, and I'll be having a discussion with her on Prime Minister's Questions, giving my verdict on what Keir Starmer does. I'll be back on Friday, Saturday and Sunday between 10 and 1 as well for those programmes, so I hope you can join me for that. And Keir Starmer is a man under pressure. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, finally getting round to what her predecessor, Yvette Cooper, didn't do. I asked this question again. What did Yvette Cooper actually do as Home Secretary? I'm not sure there was very much. The rape gang scandal, absolute scandal, and the government dragged kicking and screaming into doing an actual proper inquiry. Although, will it be a proper inquiry? There are lots of people asking that question. And Chris Philp, he is the Shadow Home Secretary. He has accused the authorities of covering up the grooming gang scandal. He spoke to ITV this morning.
Seems very clear that for many years, those in authority, the police, local councils, deliberately covered up these appalling crimes because the perpetrators were mainly of Pakistani origin and the victims were mainly young, vulnerable white girls. And the authorities at the time were more concerned about so-called community relations than about protecting the victims. The truth needs to come out. Those people in authority who covered this up need to be prosecuted for misconduct in public office and frankly sent to prison.
Chris Philp there speaking to Good Morning Britain on ITV. Well, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, she, love her or loathe her, she's been very busy and she is trying to do something. Whether it's the right thing or not, well, that's another matter. She's announced £3.5 million for these investigations. This is what she's been saying.
Alongside investment in the inquiry itself, I can announce today that a further £3.65 million will be committed this year to the policing operation, survivor support and research into grooming gangs.
Anne Longfield, who is the former Children's Commissioner, she's going to be heading that inquiry into this absolutely horrendous series of rape gangs, usually involving Pakistani men, disproportionately so, that have been covered up for such a long time within this country. Well, Shabana Mahmood said that Anne Longfield and the inquiry will be acting without fear or favour. We'll see if that actually happens, because there's been huge amounts of political correctness, of cover-up that have happened over the years. Let's hear again from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood.
The inquiry is focused specifically on child sexual abuse committed by grooming gangs. It will consider explicitly the background of offenders, including their ethnicity and religion, and whether the authorities failed to properly investigate what happened out of a misplaced desire to protect community cohesion. The inquiry will act without fear or favour, identifying individual, institutional and systemic failure.
Well, we're going to talk to a survivor of these rape gangs in just a moment, but your views at home, and whether you're in your car or however you're watching or listening to the programme, so important. Let's hear what Pete has to say on Yvette Cooper on all of this.
Hi, Pete. Pete from Lancashire. What you've just said there, mate, about Yvette Cooper, what did she do in the year and a half she was Home Secretary? Personally, my belief is if she'd have done what Shabana Mahmood's done, she'd have probably been called racist and probably kicked out the party, mate, because that's people's mentality, isn't it? Because Shamama is Muslim and she's coming up with these ideas and one thing and another. People aren't going to call her racist, are they? But Yvette Cooper, I think she'd have been called racist, mate. Looking forward to the rest of your show.
Very interesting perspective there, Pete. Thank you for your voice note from Lancashire there. Let's hear what Sarah Champion has been saying in Parliament about this as well. She is a Labour MP. She's been calling for this inquiry for some time.
I believe the scale of this is in literally every town, every city, every village in the United Kingdom, and so I hope the inquiry and the NCA work is able to cover all of that. But then that brings me to my substantive, which is this is going to cost a lot of money. Every case you find will need to be an investigation, but equally local authorities will have to put child protection measures in place.
That is Sarah Champion, the Labour MP. Well, I want to speak now to Samantha Smith, who is a survivor of a rape gang in Telford. Samantha, thank you so much for speaking to me today. I really appreciate it. Can you just tell me your thoughts today? Are you in any way encouraged, given any sort of solace by what the government's saying today? Because it's taken a heck of a long time, hasn't it?
Yes, just to clarify as well. So I'm a survivor of grooming and gang-based sexual exploitation in Telford. I was exploited for nearly a decade. My specific case was under Operation Chalice, under the sexual exploitation team, and the failures that I experienced were parallel to the Pakistani rape gang failures of other survivors and girls in my area. But my specific offenders were not Pakistani origin.
Okay.
So just to clarify.
Happy to clarify that.
But I experienced firsthand the institutional failings, the cover-up culture, the victim blaming, the criminalization that so many of us have had follow us to this day. And for Labour to undo a lifetime, and it is a lifetime, for myself it goes beyond my lifespan. I'm only in my early 20s, but there are brave survivors who are in their 40s who have been living with this since they were 10, 11 years old. For them to undo a lifetime of failures and betrayal with yet another Labour peer, yet another Labour-aligned individual with no legal experience, may I add. Baroness Longfield is not a KC. She is not
you think a judge should have been involved with this? I mean, the part of the problem, I suppose, and I want to get into a little bit of the institutional failure that you experienced in just a second, but there are questions about this. We have had, of course, a former head of child exploitation expert, senior police officer Jim Gamble, who I think would have been very good at this, actually, who people said, no, he was a policeman, he shouldn't do it. We've had people excluded for this for lots of different reasons, but you think it should have been a judge?
I think it should have been a barrister at the very least.
Okay.
I mean, we see Tom Crowther, who oversaw the inquiry in Telford. He was absolutely brilliant, and he was tipped for many years to potentially head up the national inquiry if one ever came to fruition. But he was excluded and actually came out and said that he was unhappy with the lack of communication from the government and from central authorities once Labour took over.
Can I just say briefly, I totally agree with you. He is a man of great integrity and he knew how to speak to victims. You're an incredibly articulate person, very clearly, but a lot of victims are not, for lots of different reasons, of course, totally understandably. And he said you get a lot out of people, even if you just sit down and have a cup of tea with them in their living room. And he sort of questioned sometimes the statutory national nature of this. Can we just talk a little bit about institutional failure? Because first of all, I want to say I'm absolutely appalled, and I have great sympathy with what happened to you. I'm so sorry that happened. I want to know from you what happened when you told people.
Well, I spent years in silence, being told that I would never be believed, being told that somehow I was at fault for the abuse that I suffered. Successive men over the course of a decade were able to abuse me because those in positions of power essentially told me to turn the other cheek and turn a blind eye, and that, you know, if you just kept a stiff upper lip and kept doing what you were doing, then everything would get better eventually. When I did speak out at 14 or 15, when I first came forward with the abuse that I experienced, I remember being told by a social worker that my actions had led me to where I was today, and being asked by a detective from the CSE team whether I had consented to sexual activity at any point.
Hold on. A detective from a child sexual exploitation team, a highly trained officer, someone whose job it was to be sympathetic to you and listen to you, asked if you had consented to it. You were incapable of consenting until you're 16.
I was 5 years old when my abuse started. And can I say in no uncertain terms that a child cannot consent? A child is never a willing participant in sexual activity. A child cannot be a child prostitute. A child cannot be a madam. A child cannot be asking for it or wanting it. A child is a victim of rape. If they are ever subjected to any sort of sexual contact before the age of 16, they are unequivocally a victim of rape and abuse. And yet the experience of mine and thousands of other little girls like me is that those in positions of power somehow found it easier to shift the blame onto the little girls who were abused than going after the predominantly Pakistani perpetrators of it. This was a detective from the Operation Chalice team. This was the specialized child sexual exploitation team that was set up.
Absolutely disgraceful that you went through that. That is just dreadful. I just wonder, when you see where we are today, when you give that specific example of what happened to you from someone whose job it was to protect you, who asked you that appalling, disgraceful question and treated you like that, and another social worker who told you that your own actions had led you to where you are today. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, as someone who has no experience of what you went through, it doesn't surprise me that we as a country are where we are with this. When you see political leaders who say they care about people like you, taking months and months and months and months, even to appoint a chairwoman of this inquiry, your heart must just sink. I mean, do you think the full truth, that real justice, institutional change will happen? What is your degree of confidence in this inquiry?
Well, you were absolutely right in saying that Labour were dragged kicking and screaming to a national inquiry. They didn't want this. They never wanted the truth to be exposed, because it was Labour-led councils, Labour police and crime commissioners, Labour politicians, and politicians from across political creeds. But it was predominantly Labour-run areas where little girls were being raped, abused, tortured, mutilated, and killed by Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs. So every step of this process is going to be dragged out as far as possible. It's going to be dragged out into the next parliament, into the parliament after that, because those in power know that if any inquiry was successful, it would result in themselves and their colleagues being put in prison for a very long time. The level of complicity, the level of cover-up, the level of cultural ignorance towards grooming gangs and child sexual exploitation in this nation goes up to the very top. There is no doubt in my mind that every single politician that is currently in the cabinet would have some sort of skeletons in their closet exposed if this inquiry were ever to be successful, which is why myself and so many survivors feel as though the entire process is nothing more than a whitewashing attempt, and that they aren't going to answer any new questions, they aren't going to find anything, and there most importantly isn't going to be any meaningful change, because they aren't going to have the legal expertise, they aren't going to have the powers to prosecute privately these individuals that were complicit in a structural and organizational level. And so those same powerful people will continue to mark their own homework and be in these positions of power and say that, oh, well, we might have done that 20 years ago, we might have done that 10 years ago, 5 years ago, but we've changed now, we're so much better, and you trust us to mark our own homework, don't you? And nothing will change. Yeah,
I mean, Samantha, you're an incredibly articulate person. You've put those points across brilliantly. Our brilliant producer, Jodie, behind the scenes, has just been saying to me, I am so disgusted by what is happening, and I feel that disgust as well. I feel angry listening to you, but I also feel inspired by the example that you are giving to so many other people, and not just people who've been through sexual abuse, who've been through all sorts of adverse things, terrible things, that they can have a voice. You are giving them that voice today, and I just want to thank you for speaking to me, Samantha, and I wish you well, and I hope that this inquiry listens to you. I hope that they listen to you and act in terms of what you're saying. I'm really humbled actually by listening to Samantha today. What do you think of what she said there? 0344 499 1000. Gaz in Kidderminster has been in touch and says, I just want to say that my heart goes out to that young girl and her family, to Samantha there. Sean says, I confidently predict not a single person from the police, social services, councils or anywhere else that cover for Pakistani Muslim paedophile rape gangs will be prosecuted. That is Sean in Bridlington. A number of other issues, people getting in touch. Leslie says, what did the COVID inquiry conclude? Nothing apart from waste of millions of pounds. Schools should not close, and no to masks again, says Leslie. And another person says, I believe all religion is idiotic and frankly evil. However, this is a Christian country and our entire society is based on those teachings. If foreigners don't like it, there are plenty of other countries they're perfectly welcome to move to, says that person. There's some breaking news, and that is that a member of the UK Armed Forces has been killed in what's been called a tragic accident whilst observing the new testing of a new defensive capability in Ukraine. The Ministry of Defence has said that is a member of the UK Armed Forces killed in a tragic accident while observing the testing of new defensive capability in Ukraine. We are, of course, helping the Ukraine forces. So if there's any development on all of that, we will, of course, bring that to you between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk Drive. Stay with us.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I just want to say hello to Kathy and Meyer Wolf, who are watching in Chevy Chase in Maryland in the United States. They're big fans of the programme and I'm big fans of them. They're good friends of mine and they're tuning in all the way from Maryland in the United States. There are loads of people right around the world who watch this programme as well. In the UK, Nat in Tel Aviv is watching and she says what an intelligent, articulate and beautiful young woman Samantha is, Peter. Thank you for that difficult but crucially important conversation. Thank you, Nat. John in Bury says, just want to say Samantha is an amazing young woman, very articulate and inspirational. I hope she gets the justice she deserves. Andy in North Wales says, wow, such an amazing person Samantha is. Sean says Samantha should stand as an MP, should be Labour's worst nightmare. Leslie says, is it coincidence that Labour announcing the inquiry today after Kemi's press conference yesterday and a Labour supporter, not even a KC as chairwoman? It stinks, says Leslie Willis. Anne Longfield, she is stepping down as a Labour member of the House of Lords. She'll still be a member of the House of Lords, but she is the former Children's Commissioner and a peer. Just to remind you of the news I reported just before the break there, a member of UK Armed Services has been killed in a tragic accident while observing the testing of a new defensive capability in Ukraine. The Ministry of Defence has said it will bring you any development on that story as it continues anytime between now and 7 o'clock. If we get a new line on that, we will certainly bring it to you. I want to talk now about the Workers' Rights Bill. This is a very controversial piece of legislation that the government is bringing through. People are going to be entitled to a week off to mourn the death of a distant family member. Now, bereavement leave is something which is you actually don't even get it for the only thing that it's mandatory for is the death of a child under 18. So even if it's your father or mother or your partner who dies, it's not a mandatory thing, although the vast majority of businesses and workplaces, of course, have their own policies and give people time off if these dreadful things happen. Sometimes going back to work can actually be something that helps you through your grief, but it could be mandatory for employees to give the right to have the right to a week's leave following the death of in-laws, cousins, uncles and nieces. I mean, there are some people who won't really know these people just because they happen to be related to them, and of course there's some people who have all sorts of relatives who may or may well not be known to them and take time off for these things all the time. Well, let's speak to Peter McCormack now, who is a businessman in Bedford at Real Coffees, the chairman of the non-league Real Bedford. Peter, thank you very much indeed for your company today. I just wonder, as a businessman, what you think about this, because I'm sure none of us is not compassionate. I mean, grief is a dreadful thing, and if you need time off, you need time off. But lots of people are going to see this coming and are going to realise that they're related to a heck of a lot of people.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's obviously a stupid policy. I mean, most people who run businesses are fairly compassionate, and if somebody came to me and said, look, my uncle's died, I'm very close to him, I need a couple of days off, obviously you would give them that time off. That's not something that we would ever worry about, but I think it's much more important to discuss the wider issues of this employment bill, because it's just another attack on small businesses from this government that seems to not understand how companies work or the economy works.
I mean, some of the stuff we've been talking about, even yesterday, I've been speaking to quite a number of people who run a small business. If you're one of them, give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. And I mean, there's a brilliant call actually it was about 10 to 6 yesterday, wasn't it? Paul, I think the guy's name was. And he just said, look, there's really little point in me, with all the money the government takes away from me in national insurance contributions, in taxation, in the different, the 43 different taxes that Rachel Reeves has now put up in the budget, it's actually not really worth it anymore. Small businesses that employ, backbone of this country, vast majority of them 7 or fewer people. Well, actually, what's the point anymore? A lot of people are asking that question, and then the government wonders why there isn't growth in the economy when they make it more and more difficult for people like you to earn a crust, earn the money that they then tax, that then pays for public services.
Well, we've just cancelled a business we were about to open. So we own a coffee shop, a bar and a football club all in Bedford. We were due to open a pizza restaurant early next year, and we've pulled that business for a number of reasons, but primarily it's just too difficult now and we can't be bothered. if you look at the costs of opening a business and you look at the benefits, all the risk is on the person creating the business now.
So just talk me through it. Give me an anatomy of the decision-making process. There may well be things you don't want to talk about on air. I totally understand that, confidential business reasons for that. I'm not asking you to tell me those, but just talk me through when that was an idea, when you looked into it, how much of a role Rachel Reeves and the government have had in you saying, do you know what, we're not going to bother?
So we started the process about 6 months ago. We found a lease that we were willing to take. We'd agreed terms with the landlord. We'd done the design work for the interior. We'd done all the preps for our cash flow and our cash flow planning, the capital requirements. And it was about a £400,000 total investment with a 10-year lease. Already owning two businesses and seeing the difficulty we're having with those at the moment, and knowing that these new employment laws are coming in, the increases that we've had in the minimum wage, and then the NI contributions, the trajectory is very clear under this Labour government that hospitality businesses are going to face a very difficult time over the next few years. And look, I don't mind working hard, and I could retire tomorrow and I'm fairly successful, but I don't also want to lose money.
Of course, of course. How many people were going to be employed in that pizza business?
Well, so, I mean, you'd have a lot of part-time staff, but one of the unique things we're doing it, we're actually going to take on 3 young people and make them partners in the business. So we're going to give them shareholding and train them up and prepare them for how to run a business. But the whole structure of the business and the way we've had this attack also on people's disposable incomes, it just means that all the risk is on us and all the reward goes to the government. And so we run the numbers, and it was way for thin if we were very lucky. And so you were looking at like 2 to 3 years just to break even. But that's under the current economic environment. We've had 2 budgets now where we've had an increase in taxes where we're told they weren't going to happen. They're against the manifesto. And I just think this, overall, this is not a pro-business, pro-entrepreneur party at the moment.
And it's really interesting you mentioned that, actually, because Michael Kill, who is the head of the chief executive of the Nighttime Industries Association, I spoke to him, I think around this time yesterday, actually, and he was saying, look, there's nobody in the cabinet who knows about running a business. They talk to them all the time. They talk to the Treasury, they talk to the Department of Business and Trade. They're an industry body, and they talk to all these people all the time, and they give them the information. They talk about their members and all the things that the Nighttime Industries have been through, and other businesses as well, like yours, through the pandemic, through the lockdowns, through national insurance rises, through minimum wage rises, all those kinds of things. The government doesn't seem to get it, does it?
Well, no, I mean, look, run ChatGPT, ask it how many people in the Labour Party, especially the front bench, have run a company. It will give you some very telling answers. None of them have been up late at night worrying about payroll. They're trade union members, charity workers and lawyers. And what have we got under this government is attack on our civil liberties, attack on businesses, and an increase in welfare. And look, I'm not a mean person. It's not that I don't think we should help people who are struggling in society, but we've shifted the balance so much that we now have a government that is, I personally think, in my most cynical way, is that this is a government that wants to push as many people down as possible so we have a dependent class. And that sounds like some kind of conspiracy theorist, but you just have to run the numbers. It's so obvious. But can I tell you the thing that worries me most in the employment bill?
Yeah, go ahead.
It is the part where they want to give union members access to your staff. Now, if you look across everything this government has been doing over the last couple of years, there's a strong authoritarian streak.
Yep.
David Lammy wanting to get rid of jury trials for anything but serious cases, the $1.8 billion in the budget for digital ID, and now they want to give union access to our staff members, which is a delivery mechanism for propaganda for a government, for unions who members traditionally tend to vote for the Labour Party. Now, again, I'm not against collective bargaining, but when that collective bargaining is related to voting blocks, you have a real issue whereby you're getting unions getting to decide legislation, which is counterproductive to wanting a prosperous economy.
Well, I think that's a very fair point, actually, because certainly I'm not against people joining unions if they want to. You know, unions got us things like the weekend, for example, that we didn't have. But the fact is that Labour is in hock to the unions. They always have been, because it involves so much money, and Unite the Union is threatening them at the moment. So I wonder if that's anything to do with that. I think, well, as I often say, just because you're cynical doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. Peter, I really appreciate your contribution. That's Peter McCormack there, Bedford businessman at Real Coffee, chairman of the non-league Real Bedford. And this is the story. I mean, we talked about all sorts of different issues affecting businesses there. By the way, if you're a business and you want to come on and talk about it, as a number of people did yesterday, please do. 0344 499 1000. And this story about taking a week off work if your distant cousin dies, I should give the government their due on this. A spokesman for the Department of Business and Trade said, our employment rights bill is pro-worker and pro-business and will help productivity, drive economic growth and have a positive impact on the workplace. Compassionate employers will already give workers leave if a close friend dies, and we are consulting on whether to formalise these arrangements for all workers. Let me hear a voice note now on Dave. This is about wearing masks and the NHS. Let's hear what Dave has to say.
Hi Cardi P, Dave here from Crew. Great show as always. Just a quick one on the mask thing. I think they know full well the British public are not going to have any of it this time. But this gives a great excuse now for when the NHS has its usual meltdown, as it always does. They can say, oh, well, it's the fault of the population for not wearing masks. Cheers, mate. Take care.
Thanks, Dave. Listen, that makes a lot of sense. Laura Jane is in Hampshire and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Laura Jane, I think you want to talk about Christian values. You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter. Yes, I would like to talk about them. I know that for a lot of people they will seem rather low down the list of priorities at the moment, but I agree with Mark from Lincolnshire. I think that it's very worrying that we can be flippant about it and say people don't say Happy Christmas anymore and all those things, but I'm afraid we really are going down to hell in a handcart, pardon me, with this worrying lack of Christian values.
What needs to happen? Because there are a lot of people who aren't religious. I'm one of them, Laura Jane. I'm not religious at all. I'm agnostic, but I understand the importance of Judeo-Christian values. I totally understand how a basis of a society in those values is a very, very good thing, and they're values that I try to uphold. I don't always do it, I feel, on many, many occasions, but I understand the importance of that. How do we get back to that, Laura Jane, do you think?
Well, I think we have to recognise an old-fashioned tradition that, yes, we are a Christian country. That is what the King is head of. I happen to be Roman Catholic, so the head of my religion is in Rome. But the point is, I don't disrespect the King just because he's the head of the Church of England. I'd have a couple of things to say to Henry VIII if he came back, but that's neither here.
That would be a very interesting conversation, actually, Laura Jane. Do you know, I went to a Catholic service relatively recently, earlier this year, in Notre Dame Cathedral. It was absolutely beautiful, Laura Jane. It was really, really wonderful. In Paris, they've redone it all, and they've rebuilt it, and there's stone there that hasn't been exposed and cleaned and all the rest of it in hundreds of years. And a friend of mine from Dublin actually said to me at the end, said, Peter, can we recruit you? Can we get you to become a Catholic? And I said, I'm afraid you can't. There's just too much standing. There's just too much standing. You got to stand up a lot. And I said, you guys really know how to put the stand into transubstantiation. Laura Jane, happy Christmas to you.
But can I just say one more thing?
You can.
I think we have forgotten about the teacher in Ireland, Southern Ireland, who is also in the same situation as the teacher, various people. He is being sent to prison because he wouldn't say they, them, or various things. I'm sure you're aware of the
I think you're talking about Enoch Burke. It's a wee bit more complicated than that. But Laura Jane, I appreciate your sentiments on that, and thank you for your call. That's Laura Jane in Hampshire. I really appreciate that. Thank you to Linda in Deal, who says it's heartbreaking that Samantha and many other girls have been put through this hell. That was Samantha who spoke to us before the break there. What an amazing young lady. I would like to see Stephen Barrett head the inquiry. And Jess says, my mum died when I was 12. We were given 2 days off school. Gosh, seems a bit harsh, certainly. I'm sorry to hear that happened to you when you were so young. We're going to talk in just a second about MI5 trying to cover up the truth about what really happened in the Troubles. We'll speak to the former political editor of BBC Northern Ireland, Mark Davenport. He knows this stuff backwards. This is a big scandal about our history. It comes into all sorts of different stories, particularly about prosecuting soldiers as well. That's something that we've talked about in this station and on my programmes on numerous occasions. We'll speak to Mark in just a second. You're going to want to hear this. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Martin in Oastry, who says, regarding wearing masks again, I'm a postman. I never wore a mask during COVID, never caught COVID either. I certainly will not wear one again. Kathy in Devon says, my daughter is MND, and if I give her a cold, it would kill her. My brother-in-law has IPF. I don't know what IPF is, I'm afraid. Same story, so don't tell me that my sister and I were stupid to wear a mask to protect them. I've never said anybody was stupid, Kathy. I've just said that what Carol Sikora, Professor Carol Sikora, has said, which is that the masks, which are simply the paper ones, aren't effective. That is the view of Professor Carol Sikora. He knows of what he speaks. Mark Davenport is with me now. He's the former political editor of BBC Northern Ireland. Mark, it's a real pleasure to have you on the programme. It's a horrible, horrible story that we're talking about, a complicated one as well. This is the final report into an army spy operating at the heart of the IRA during the Troubles has been published. Freddie Scappaticci was steak knife. That's never been officially acknowledged, but everybody knows it. He was a member of the IRA, feeding information to the army, linked to 14 murders and 15 abductions. Just tell us about this report. It's been a long time coming, Mark.
That's true. Good to be talking to you, Peter. This is an agent who the army in Northern Ireland regarded as extremely important. A former general who was the commander of land forces in Northern Ireland actually once described steak knife, which was the code name for Freddie Scappaticci, as the golden egg in terms of intelligence of what was going on in the IRA. But he worked for the army and handlers in military intelligence between the late 1970s and the 1990s. He provided an enormous amount of intelligence, 3,500 different intelligence reports during that time to the military, but he was also involved in an awful lot of criminality and seems to have been protected during the course of his career, even though he was a member of what was known, pardon the language, as the Nutting Squad, and that was the sort of black humour of the IRA for the squad that was tasked with hunting down informers within the IRA and killing them in the head, hence nutting. And Freddie Scappaticci, otherwise known as Steak Knife, as you say, has been thought to have been involved in 14 murders, 15 abductions of other individuals, and yet never faced a court for those crimes. And whilst the army said that his intelligence was extremely valuable, the Canova team, which reported today, reckon that he probably took more lives than he saved.
This was an absolutely shameful episode. He was someone who was at the heart of the dirty war, as it was called, in the Troubles. I just wonder whether the families feel as if they'll really get the truth, people who were killed on his instructions, or those who were caught by the authorities on his evidence, for example, which no doubt some people have called into question in the last number of years. John Boucher as well, calling on the UK government to do the right thing and name Steak Knife. They have a long-standing policy. I remember it from the Northern Ireland office when I worked there, NCND, neither confirm nor deny, because as soon as you confirm, so the logic is anyway, as soon as you confirm one spy's name or one informer's name, then it'll just lead to more others as well. Tell us about the role of MI5 in all of this. Its Director General Sir Ken McCallum today apologising for what he calls late discoveries. I mean, that's a bit of a euphemism.
Yes, there has been an extraordinary breakdown of relations between the Canova team, which was originally led by John Batchelor, who's now the Chief Constable in Northern Ireland, and then over the last couple of years has been led by Sir Ian Livingstone, a former Chief Constable in Scotland, and MI5. Because Canova hoovered up all the intelligence they thought was relevant to the case of Steak Knife. They released an interim report back in 2024, and then MI5, after that report had come out and after decisions had been made by the prosecution service in Northern Ireland not to take criminal action against anyone over this case, then found more information. And that information, according to the Canova team, revealed that MI5's involvement, which they had said at one stage had been peripheral with Steak Knife, had actually been more substantial than that they had received reports from him over the course of a long period of time, that they'd also been involved in tasking him with what to do, even though it was the army that was handling him in person. MI5 benefited from the intelligence that he fed through, and they were aware of a lot of this criminality being allowed to run. So, yeah, there's basically been a bit of a acrimony now between the two teams, John Boucher and the Canova team, basically saying, look, MI5, whilst this might not have led to anybody being criminally charged, if it hadn't been for this delay, things could have been investigated more promptly than otherwise was the case. And they've accused MI5 of essentially trying to, I suppose, frustrate their efforts and run down the clock, and said that the damage is done because the families that Canova has been dealing with, that this has damaged their sense of whether they've got the full story here.
I wonder if we could zoom out a little bit, Mark. I mean, you're a long time correspondent on all these issues. You've covered Northern Ireland for many, many years. I just wonder, a lot of our viewers and listeners here at Talk will see some of the justice, some of the truth that is coming out, certainly in regard to prosecuting soldiers, for example, something we've talked about many times on my programme. They'll see this inquiry and they'll see the truth, or a version of the truth, that's come out as a result of this. Yet there are so many aspects of the Troubles where we'll never know the full truth, and there'll never be full justice. And, you know, as I was often told, again, when I worked in the Northern Ireland office in government, you know, the IRA didn't keep records. They didn't keep records in the way that the Army, the police and MI5 did. So I just wonder, is this helpful today to some? Is it frustrating to others? Will anything really change, do you think?
Well, you're right in saying that the whole business of the legacy of the Troubles is very difficult terrain. And as you say, the paramilitaries, the IRA and the Loyalists didn't keep a record. So there's going to be limits to what we will find out, particularly when members of those groups are either passed away or aren't cooperating because they don't see any reason to cooperate with the authorities. In terms of those families who've been caught up in this, I suppose for them, it gives them some more information, and it is important for them given what their loved ones went through. But it is very difficult territory. And what you referred to, that policy of neither confirm nor deny, that's been a long-standing policy because the government says, well, look, we need agents. We will need them in the future in order to find out about very dangerous organizations. And that if you start naming them subsequently, that could put off future recruitment. Now, in this case, it's got almost to absurd levels where everybody knows, it's the Northern Ireland phrase, the dogs in the street know, that Freddie Scappaticci, before he fled to England in 2003, was Steak Knife. But the government doesn't want to set a legal precedent that it feels could create problems in the future if it's trying to infiltrate, say, dissident Republican organizations or other organizations that are involved in violence in the future. So it's a complex terrain, and I suspect, yes, we will never get the truth, and there will always be people who will be left frustrated by the picture that emerges.
Mark, thank you. Much appreciated. That's Mark Davenport there, who is the former political editor of BBC Northern Ireland. Appreciate his contribution to the programme. We're going to get the sport in a second with Sean Custis. He's the head of sport for The Sun. We'll take more of your calls as well. Stay with us here on Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit.
From The Sun. Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots on masks. James and Devon says if masks don't work, why do nurses, etc., wear them in hospital? Well, they wear the medical grade ones. We're talking, of course, about the main masks that people wear, the little paper ones that just do not work. Ernie says, I work in construction. One day after COVID, I had some of the blue medical masks left over. I was doing a patio and disc cutting a concrete slab. I thought I'd try the mask. Within seconds, I couldn't breathe. I was coughing up dust. Now, bear in mind, a virus is 1,000,000 times smaller than a dust particle. They do not work, says Ernie. Well, you know, Ernie, thank you for that. We've also had Professor Carol Sikora talking about this as well. He knows of what he speaks. Anyway, we're going to leave the news just for a second and instead turn to the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Sean Custis, who is the head of sport at The Sun, is with us. How are you doing? You all right?
Evening, Peter. Yep,
good to see you. Having a better day than Mo Salah. He has been left out of the squad for Liverpool's game against Inter Milan tonight. Tell us what's happening.
Yeah, all eyes on that game, that Liverpool game tonight. Champions League's back, and Salah, as you may know, Peter, gave an explosive interview at the weekend in which he said Liverpool had thrown him under the bus because he wasn't playing. He didn't have a relationship with manager Arne Slot anymore. Hinted that it could be over at Liverpool, although he didn't actually say he wanted to leave. He thought somebody at the club wanted to get him out. That put the manager in a very difficult position. How could he play him this week? Of course, he didn't play him at the weekend when they drew 3-3 against Leeds. This was one of the reasons for Salah's outburst, because he never got off the bench. So now the question was, could he travel to Milan? And it was decided by board and manager that he couldn't. They can't have him there. I mean, Salah is one of Liverpool's greatest ever players at all time. This is a big call for him not to be going to a game, which Liverpool really could do with winning tonight. But he's not there. He has posted a picture of himself today in the gym at Liverpool, sitting there looking at his phone, looking all forlorn, almost like Diana's picture, remember, in India with that,
the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like that, him looking wistfully into the distance with the training ground behind him. Jamie Carragher, who is his nemesis, who used to be a big player for Liverpool and is now a pundit, had actually called Salah a disgrace last night for the way he's behaved, and Carragher is not impressed with the way he's behaving. And
how do they get past this, do you think, Sean?
I don't think it's easy to get past at all. I don't say it's almost like Salah's gambling on the fact that when he comes back from the Africa Cup of Nations, which he leaves for after next weekend's game against Brighton, that Slot might be out of the job. So when he comes back, he's gone. I don't see how Slot could pick him again as long as he's the manager there. So there's a bit of an impasse. But I don't actually think Salah wants to leave this season. He's talked about how happy his children are in Liverpool and how settled he is.
It's a great city.
He did, of course, sign a new contract in the summer, and he wants to be back in the team. But I agree with you, it looks very, very difficult how you can do that. And if you're the manager, if you've got a player there who you know doesn't really trust you, like you, have faith in you.
And all those around the manager as well, the slot machine, as it were.
There is a bit of a question whether whose side the players are on.
Yeah.
You know, do you have to take a side? I think there is some sympathy among some of the players for his position, but equally, they don't think it's right that you call out the manager in public. And it's been played out very, very publicly. Now, just quickly, when a manager takes on a player, it can lead to all sorts of problems. But Alex Ferguson used to have these issues at Man United.
Well,
he's only ever won one.
He always won, didn't he? He always won, even against David Beckham and people like that.
But they ended up leaving.
Yeah, that's it. You know? Well, no, Fergie was the man. Champions League back tonight, both Chelsea and Liverpool in action.
Liverpool, as we've said, could do with a win against Inter Milan. Inter Milan are higher in the table and doing pretty well. They've won 4 games out of 5. Chelsea against Atalanta, both on 10 points. Chelsea again, need a win. Spurs home to Slavia Prague. Even Spurs should be all right for this one. Slavia Prague haven't won a game in the Champions League so far. Spurs, they're not doing amazing, but they're surely good enough to see off Slavia Prague, I would say.
Tell us about Manchester United winning their Premier League game against Wolverhampton Wanderers last night, an away game as well, of
There
course.
would have been some serious inquests if Man United had lost that one. They won 4-1. We know what an inconsistent season they're having. And they had hit a sticky patch just recently before playing Wolves. But Wolves, bottom of the league, 2 points, no wins this season. Manchester United even Manchester United in their current form were expected to win that, and they did do the job. So bit of pressure off there. Their next game's next Monday, home to Bournemouth, who are a bit on the slide. So if they can win that as well, it's ridiculous. But Man United could be pushing for the top 4 again, despite how indifferent they've been this season. So a bit of relief there, because I think Amorim would have been in big trouble if he'd lost to Wolves.
Sean, thank you very much. As always, that is Sean Custis there, who is Head of Sport for The Sun. Appreciate him joining us on the programme. Lots to discuss, lots of people getting in touch about all the different issues that we're talking about today. Dan Ewell says there are rape, sexual assaults, murders every day in the news. We can see mass immigration from the third world endangers and ruins our country. Successive governments will not protect our borders or our people. It's interesting as well, actually, a lot of people getting in touch about the story about the teacher, about the teacher banned from telling a child that Britain is a Christian country. Grace is in London and will have some views on this. She's given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Grace, what would you like to say?
Can I just mention briefly, I think in the message you read out a second ago, unless I misheard, someone used the phrase, which I keep hearing now, third world, as a kind of derogatory term. And I've got to say, if one has any Christian values at all, one should not be so disrespectful and dehumanising about people who happen to be born into severe poverty. I understand that there are places in the third world where there are values that we might not agree with, but human beings who are, by the lottery of birth, born in the third world should not be looked down upon in the way that some people are doing. That is not a Christian attitude. But in terms
but I think what perhaps that texture was thinking, Grace, was about not looking down on someone because they're poor, but saying that the values of many third world countries do not align with our own values, and that's fundamental to this point as well about the teacher.
I mean, I'm not sure exactly to what extent that's true, because there are plenty of third world countries where there are far more Christians than there are here in Britain as a proportion. So I just think generally it is to look down on people on the basis of where they're born, whereas in fact we're all different and we all have our own sins and things to contend with, and we need to have compassion for people who happen to be born into severe poverty. Jesus made that blooming clear. Indeed, our country has really been shaped by Christian teachings. That's so true. And one of the things about Christian teaching is that, in contrast to the idea that one would need to, for instance, wash one's feet or otherwise in a particular way, Jesus actually said, no, it's not primarily about certain rules and practices, although those can be nice and helpful. That's one way that Christianity is quite contrasted with other religions. Ritualistic practices are not what's fundamental. It's choosing to follow Jesus as opposed to doing this thing and this thing in this way, as is the case with some other religions. But obviously, it's completely outrageous that this teacher has lost their job, particularly when we've got a shortage of teachers and also a shortage of people to deal with child abuse. So that's awful. But as some other people, I think, have said earlier, Christianity is not just about this country. I can't remember the name of your caller who was making a point similar to this. It is personally a decision that you make to follow Christ or not. And so we can't just say, oh, it's our culture. We need to think about...
But there are cultural elements that are informed by the Judeo-Christian values we have.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
I mean, if it's true that Jesus offers us salvation, then that is so exciting. We shouldn't get so worried about pedantic arguments about how we label our country. We should be thinking about.
I don't think it's a pedantic argument. I think it's a fundamental fact that we are a Christian country, Grace. And the point is that if someone's going to be admonished and told that they can't say that and they shouldn't say that, and they're in danger if they say that, that's an issue.
I entirely agree this person should not be sacked. I don't know to what extent the incident was about them raising their voice, because I wasn't there.
Well, that was. I mean, they certainly made a. There was certainly a. There was certainly a complaint made that a teacher shouted within that, and that's, you know, teachers shout all the time, would be my point. Thank you, Grace. Really appreciate your call. John in Long Lawford says, since when have we had our military posted in Ukraine? And I mean, that is a very interesting point. Certainly, they've been training people in Ukraine for some time, and there is that big question about whether there should be, you know, how involved we should be in the Ukraine conflict, especially with all the military aid that has been given, and the fact that Ukraine is not a NATO country, but also Russia, some would argue, I certainly don't, is sort of on our doorstep in Eastern Europe and could advance further. I don't think there's any evidence that they would do that, but it's an interesting point, that is, after the breaking news that we reported earlier on. Lots more to discuss in the next hour, including about Sadiq Khan. He should be stripped of his power to run the Met, according to a report. What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Donald Trump has slammed Sadiq Khan again. We'll talk about that on Talk Drive in the next hour. We'll also talk about a new report that says Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, should be stripped of his powers to run London's police service. That is a very, very interesting point. He is the Police and Crime Commissioner for London as Mayor of London. We'll talk about that. We'll get your views on everything else, including this teacher, disgracefully, who has been told that he can't teach because he told off students and said that Britain is a Christian country, which, let's remember, factually it is. We're talking about all sorts of things today. We're talking about MI5 cover-ups. We're talking about Trump's peace deal being on the brink of collapse. A member of the British Armed Forces killed in Ukraine as well. Tragic story. Talking about that. Also, the rape gangs inquiry. They've finally found a chairwoman for this inquiry. She's a Labour peer. A number of people not too happy about that. Employment rights as well. Labour says that you could have a week off if your distant cousin dies. Is that the right thing? I'd love to hear from some more people in small businesses. We heard from quite a few of them yesterday. If you want to get in touch on any issue we're talking about today, or anything you think we should be talking about here on Talk Drive, the number is 0344 499 1000. I love hearing your common sense. I love hearing exactly what you think and the family values, the values that we bring to this station every single day, the home of common sense that is Talk. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute, please, if you would. Send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Let's talk between now and 7 o'clock. Kevin O'Sullivan is coming up then, but plenty to discuss in the next hour here on Talk Drive. Well, yet again, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has been slagging off the Mayor of London. This is what he has been saying about Sir Sadiq Khan.
Your Mayor of London, he's a disaster. He's a disaster. He's got a totally different ideology of what he's supposed to have. And he gets elected because so many people have come in and they vote for him now because, you know, it's like, it's one of those things. But I hate what's happened to London and I hate what's happened to Paris. I hate when I see it.
Donald Trump talking about Sadiq Khan. Well, Leila Cunningham is a Westminster City Councillor for Reform UK. Leila, great to have you on the programme. There's also a report out today that advocates that Sadiq Khan should be stripped of his power to run the Met. This is only 45% of Londoners believing the Metropolitan Police doing a good job in their local area. That's down from 69% in 2016. This is a report by the Policy Exchange think tank. It's blamed a decline in confidence in the force's failure to detect high-volume crime such as thefts, its poor handling of large-scale protests, we know there's pro-Palestinian protests as well, and not strengthening neighbourhood policing. We'll get on to Sadiq Khan in just a second, perhaps, Leila, but as a city councillor yourself, you must every single day talk to your constituents and others who aren't happy with the Metropolitan Police. What's your view on this report?
I mean, the report says what Londoners and my residents feel for years. It appears that the mayor has lost control of policing and public confidence has collapsed. I get so many residents who don't even report crime. They feel completely unsafe. People are moving out of London because they don't feel safe in the city. Children are consistently mugged, targeted, you know, threatened with a knife. And what the report says is the Met is failing on the basics. Street crime is up, theft crime is up, knife crime is rampant, and detection rates are historic low. And listen, I don't blame the Met. I've worked very closely as a senior Crown prosecutor with the police. I was even honoured to attend a police dojo as one of the first cohort of prosecutors where they simulate, you know, real experiences where they're exposed to violence. And I have huge respect for them. But that they don't feel the respect from the top. And, you know, the report recommends special measures again. Imagine the Mets being in special measures yet again because nothing's improved. And listen, it calls for removing the mayor's power, but if he's failed in his basic duty of keeping us safe, then should he still retain those powers?
Well, how much can Sadiq Khan be actually blamed for this, do you think?
So he sets the whole strategy for the police, actually. He has the strategic
power.
But
operationally, they're independent, of course.
But there is an overarching strategy. For instance, we know that he put aside money to target hate speech or what he calls, you know, discrimination. I would have liked to see, and you know, he was deeply worried about the level of discrimination or the level of inflammatory language. I would like to see that level of worry for knife crime or, you know, sexual assault that's gone up. But you don't see it. So there is a strategy and a focus that he directs the Met to do. And there is also budgetary. I think the report says that it's not a matter of, we have a lot of police officers, just they're not on the ground.
No, it's a very, very interesting point. Tell us about this. I mean, it's interesting. The spokesman for Sir Sadiq said nothing is more important to the mayor than keeping London safe. He continues to lead the way by being tough on crime with a record 1.16 billion support from the police this year alone, and tough on the complex causes of crime through the country's first violence reduction unit, which is leading an approach rooted in prevention and intervention. This approach has led to significant reductions in crime in London, with last year seeing London record the lowest number of homicides for under 25s for more than 2 decades, and overall homicides in the capital falling to the lowest level this year since monthly records began in 2003. Is there anything in that, Leila?
Yeah, so he talks a lot about homicides, and that's where he hangs his hat on. But homicides are a very specific case, and they really do feel the full force of the law. And they're in the hundreds, and they're horrific, and when it happens. But there's so much other daily, consistent, relentless crime that Londoners feel on a daily basis in their everyday lives that is completely ignored. You know, when someone is murdered in the capital, the police, rightly so, take it very seriously and allocate a lot of resources to it. And that's the right thing to do. But all the other crimes, the daily, relentless crimes that you read about, those have gone up. And Londoners, you speak to Londoners, they just don't feel safe.
I wonder if we could talk about this story about a council that has fined a man 4 times after a disabled bay was painted around his legally parked car. This is in Croydon. The owner of the car left his car on an unrestricted road near his home in South London while he was on holiday last month. He returned to find he had been issued with 4 penalty charge notices. Footage from CCTV showed workers painted around his car, prompting parking attendants to give him tickets on 4 consecutive days. I mean, this is ludicrous.
I mean, it's actually insulting. And you see it a lot from, you know, those in power, because they really think we're stupid. It's not just the fines, it's the assumption that that man's going to come and pay those 4 tickets and not realise what's been done. They assume we're stupid enough to accept all this rubbish. I mean, that's not an honest mistake. That's a deliberate thing they did, and it's contempt for the average person.
Yep, I think I agree with all of that. Layla, thank you. That's Layla Cunningham there, who's a Westminster City Councillor for Reform UK. I appreciate her contribution to the programme today. Let me just read out a couple of messages here about everything that everybody has been in touch about, including about Samantha, who was the rape gangs victim we spoke to earlier on. Samantha has said it all, says David. This Pakistani rape gang scandal would show catastrophic failures and cover-ups from the grassroots level all the way to the very, very top. It would highlight the failure of this grossly flawed diversity experiment, and that's why the inquiry itself will be a whitewash. The establishment cannot and will not let the true extent of the activities of these horrendous organised criminals. David also says, happy Christmas from the Cotswold. David, thank you. Happy Christmas to you. And on bereavement leave, Max in Minchinhampton said, hello Peter, this policy to allow a week's bereavement if a distant relative dies will be totally abused by certain types in the workforce and is yet another example of stripping away of employers' rights. What next? Uncle Fred's poodle had to be put down and too distressed to come into work, says Max. Well, do you know what, Max? I mean, I am probably not going to need a lot of bereavement leave if certain members of my family die. Not that I would want them to, of course, but if it's a distant relative, it's probably not going to upset me too much. Whereas, you know, if Jack will not last forever, and when he crosses the Rainbow Bridge, I'm probably going to need a month, if not a year off. On Sadiq Khan, Sir Sadiq to you, he is Knight of the Realm. Robbie in Dundee has been in touch. Robbie, what would you like to say?
Hi Peter, just that Sadiq Khan, you know, I believe that first and foremost his allegiance is to Islam.
Why do you think that, Robbie?
I guess because of the evidence. The apart from little things like his behaviour when he had to sing those Christmas carols that were about Christ, but on a more macro scale, you know, the only reason that the police are going around in rainbow-covered cars and dancing with the LGBT crowd, that's all under his guidance.
It's not very Islamic it's not, it doesn't exactly, the Quran isn't exactly particularly liberal on the LGBT issues, Robbie.
No, it's exactly, that's exactly right.
But then how can his allegiance be to Islam?
Well, because we've seen it time and time again. That's what extreme Islam does. It allies with the far left, with all these people, and then once it's not a minority anymore.
I don't like Sadiq Khan, but I don't think he's an extremist. Do you?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
I don't think there's any evidence of that, Robbie. And actually, there are people who are extremist Islamists themselves who have threatened Sir Sadiq Khan. I mean, that's why he has 24-hour security, Robbie.
I believe he's a Trojan horse. He's maybe not an extremist in some sort of, you know, mad somebody with something strapped to his chest type, but I believe he's could be more dangerous.
Okay, well, Robbie, thanks for your thoughts. I think we're going to respectfully disagree. I don't like Sir Sadiq Khan as a politician. I don't think he's a good politician at all. I think he makes very, very bad decisions. I live in London. I pay council tax in London, but I don't think he's an extremist at all. I don't think his allegiance, first and foremost, is to Islam, and I think Robbie's wrong. But he's entitled to his opinion. So thank you to Robbie for the call. Listening to Peter McCormack, says Amanda in London, reinforces my absolute contempt for the way this Labour government's ignorance toward business is destroying this country, or dare I even suggest their actions are actually deliberate, says Amanda. Joanna in Salisbury, hi Cardi P. The millions of pounds more the government are giving to the investigation, I feel the person that would make the best of some of this money, he's talking about the rape gangs investigation, would be Maggie Oliver. With a tiny fraction of what's being thrown around, Maggie has done so much and still fundraising and has barristers taking action on people that new. Caroline is in London and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000 on the fact that the former Children's Commissioner Anne Longfield is going to be the new chairwoman of this rape gangs inquiry. Caroline, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. I really don't want to be negative, but I'm going to be honest. Every single day on the news, on Talk and wherever, we're just hearing every day something else. Like they're changing the House of Lords. They're going to get passed laws. We're living in a totalitarian state. The immigrant situation. And now we're getting a Labour person to do the chair. It's an absolute farce with our money. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not. Everyone knows that. Why the hell wasn't Maggie Oliver on there? They're not going to solve
the point, Caroline, I think Maggie Oliver would be a fantastic person to get to the bottom of this and to call people out. The point is that she was a whistleblower and therefore wouldn't have been considered for this because she was someone who investigated these crimes. What they want is someone who's independent. Now, frankly, I'd be happy for someone, I would question, and I'm sure she would deny this, but I think it's a reasonable point to make, and I think maybe you're making it as well, is how independent can someone who has been a member of the Labour Party actually be with this, given the fact that there were Labour councils, and other councils as well, but Labour councils that turned a blind eye to this.
Absolutely, but you know, I don't think it should be anyone political. But I don't know if there is anyone such person anymore in this country. But it's not going to happen. I listened to your interview today. I mean, with the young lady.
Yep.
I mean, I don't have words. I'm ashamed of being British. I feel that every single day. Great listening to Talk. I love you. I love all your guys. But all we do is talk. And every day something else bad is happening. Sadiq Khan getting a golden pension, Peter. And while they're just sticking a knife in every British person. People going to prison for nothing, getting rid of jury service. You know, at some point, the Brits have got to stand up. We've got to do something because our country every day is being eradicated underneath us every single day. And we've got 3 more years of this.
Yeah.
Are
there political leaders out there? Are there people who can change this, who can turn this round to make Britain a country you're proud to live in again, Caroline?
Well, one man I love, but he's not going to be able to do it, and that's Rupert Lowe.
Okay.
I think he's there for the right reasons. You know, maybe Reform are keeping back with what they're going to do, but we've got, I had a client of mine, her and her husband both work for the civil service, and she basically told me that her husband finishes every day at 12 o'clock because there's no more work, and he earns 90 grand a year, and people in her work don't come into work. They don't know what they're doing. There's, and there's Muslim prayer rooms in all the. I mean, it's not working. They don't work. And we're just working to pay them. And how is Reform or anybody going to absolutely desecrate the system and start from scratch? I don't know if they are. I don't know.
Caroline, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate that. Ian is in Chesterfield. Ian, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
I'd like to say, Peter, that for the first time in living memory, I totally disagree with you, and I think where you said that other chap was wrong, I'm afraid I think it's you that's wrong.
Okay, tell me why I'm wrong, Ian. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Right, Sadiq Khan has, for me, as a Londoner, has done absolutely nothing to deserve a knighthood. It was absolutely farcical. And
Agreed.
The thing you won't agree with me, and I won't try and persuade you because you think of it differently, but everybody that I speak to agrees with this. He has put Muslims in London first for a very, very long time, whether it's been housing, affordable housing, whether it's been quotas for jobs within TfL. He is a very strong Sunni Muslim. And I'm afraid the truth is, if we're going to talk honestly, we've got to get it out on the table. He does put Islam first. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure there's evidence to support that, Ian, to be brutally honest.
Oh, there is. Well, there is. They've had housing in Camden before, homeless people and indigenous white people. There's been quotas on the TfL. Transport for London. I'm sorry on this particular thing.
There aren't quotas on TfL specific.
You're
okay,
wrong.
all right, Ian. There are not quotas specifically on Transport for London specifically for Muslims, are there? There may well be ethnic minority quotas, which I don't agree with either, to be honest. But it's not specifically for Muslims, is it?
Well, I know white Christians that didn't get an interview,
and that's disgraceful. And that I totally agree with you. That's disgraceful, and I don't agree with quotas. But the point that he is specifically putting people of the Muslim faith first, I don't think stacks up in that. Okay. He may well have quotas for people of ethnic minorities, but that's a different thing, Ian, isn't it?
Okay, I'll let you get on. I'll just ask you a question. Do you honestly, in your heart of heart, hand on heart, think that Sadiq Khan puts Christians exactly level with Muslims in London? Do you really think that?
I don't know I can't look into his brain. What I can tell you, Ian...
No, he doesn't.
Is, and that's absolutely fine, and you're entitled to your opinion, Ian. My point is that I think he's a terrible politician. I think he's a really bad mayor of London. I'd never vote for him. I don't think he should have... I totally agree with you, Ian. I don't think he should have a knighthood. I think he's failed on many points. What I don't think is that, as someone suggested earlier, and you haven't suggested this in fairness, Ian, but that, there's some sort of Islamic takeover here. I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah, well, I think London will look very different in 20 years if Labour stay in power, I'll tell you that.
Okay. Ian, listen, thanks for your point, and I appreciate... Okay. Do you know what, Ian, actually, before you go... Hold on, put it up again, please. Ian, before you go, he's gone. He has gone, but I appreciate people who have the cojones, as Ian has, to ring me up and tell me I'm wrong about things. And do you know what? We disagree without being disagreeable, and that's fine. Ian and I had a perfectly reasonable conversation, and I hope that he gives me another ring, whether he tells me I'm right or wrong. Again, you can do the same thing, 0344 499 1000. Some breaking line and update now on what has happened, this story about the soldier. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has sent his deepest sympathies and condolences to the family of the member of UK Armed Forces who was killed in Ukraine today, adding their service and sacrifice will never be forgotten. It's interesting, they keep saying member of the UK Armed Forces. They don't say a soldier, and I wonder whether it was someone from the Special Forces. I'd be very interested to find that out. Maybe we will in the days to come. This is a member of the British Armed Forces killed in what has been called a tragic accident in Ukraine. The incident occurred during a test of Ukrainian defensive capabilities away from the front line. Again, that is pretty vague in what the Ministry of Defence is saying. The death not as a result of hostile fire, according to British Defence sources, and the UK previously acknowledging the presence of a small number of British personnel in Ukraine, providing security to the UK's diplomatic presence and supporting Ukraine's armed forces. Well, we know when we indeed were lied to about the fact that special forces were there, special forces are there, and I wonder whether this person was a member of the special forces. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that necessarily. I'm not saying they shouldn't have been there. I'm saying that we should be told the full truth of this, and that is the member of the UK Armed Forces, that's how they're being described, killed in a tragic accident while observing the testing of new defensive capability in Ukraine. The Prime Minister has sent his deepest sympathy and condolences to the family, and adding their service and sacrifice will never be forgotten. We also don't know if this is a man or a woman. We're getting very scant details about this. I do think we do need to ask for more information, and I'm sure there'll be many journalists in this building who will do exactly that. I will talk about that and indeed Trump's peace deal, whether it is on the brink of collapse, with James Sunderland, Colonel James Sunderland, who will be with me in just a second. I want your views as well on all the issues we're talking about today. Similarly with Ian, as well as Ian, if you think I'm wrong, that's okay. We disagree without being disagreeable. 0344 499 1000.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch today, including John Robertson, Germany, who says, this teacher who was hounded for saying the UK is a Christian country. You ask why the overreach is the same as with the far-right riots in Starmer. Go in with the attack dog, shut down all debate, silence any dissent, make an example of and treat anyone not joining the groupthink as the enemy. Starting to think that the conspiracy theories just might have a point. It keeps on happening. Barry says, at first we thought the government were incompetent, but now I think we've realised that they know exactly what they're doing. They're turning the UK into a communist dictatorship. David in the Cotswolds says, why are we messing around with these illegal immigrants that are gaming the system by claiming to be asylum seekers? Labour say they will get them out of the hotels by putting a few in old army camps. Then where do they go, and where do the rest of them go? Out into our communities? There are only two ways this will go. Either they are all gathered up and sent back, or I can envisage eventually there will be civil arrest in this country that will tear the fabric of it apart, says David in Cotswolds. In the Cotswolds. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Leslie says the Rwanda plan was not perfect, but the migrants would have been sent immediately to Rwanda. No human rights lawyers. The cost was far less than the proposed billions holding centre. And Jane says, what happens when there are no hotels left, no other accommodation to house them? Do they take people's homes off them, says Jane. Lots and lots of comments coming in on all sorts of matters as well. There are quite a few of them on the awful detail that was coming out of what Samantha said to me a little bit earlier on in the programme. Very, very powerful interview, very powerful what she was saying to me. I want to talk now about Trump's peace deal, whether it's on the brink of collapse and Ukraine preparing to present a new peace deal for Trump after these London talks that happened yesterday. Just before I do that, we don't have very much detail, but James Sunderland is with us, military expert, former colonel in the army, former MP. He worked for the Home Secretary previously as well. James knows of what he speaks. James, we don't have a lot of detail, but we do know that a member of the armed services has been killed in a tragic accident while observing the testing of new defensive capability in Ukraine. Keir Starmer sent his deepest sympathies and condolences to the family of, and it's interesting the language, the wording that's being used here, a member of the UK Armed Forces. It's possible, isn't it? We don't know, but it's possible that this was a Special Forces person, isn't it?
It's entirely possible. I can't comment on special force movements in Ukraine, but one guesses they might be there. But what's interesting is two things. The first thing is that the MOD has clearly made the statement. There clearly has been a fatality, tragic. The MOD has to report that as quickly as possible. But by the same token, the MOD was also quite keen to stress that it was whilst watching a trial or a test of some defensive capability. So the MOD has been quite keen to say that the soldier was not engaged in active combat or military activity. But also it is quite routine because in as much as the MOD has a duty to report the fatality, there is a next of kin notification process which needs to happen straight away. And what the MOD is not going to do is release details of what happened or indeed the name until the family has at least been informed.
Absolutely, and that is correct that procedure exists. James, how close are we to a deal, and is it on the brink of collapse, do you think, in regard to the wider picture in Ukraine? What's your assessment of what we know and what's been happening? And of course we saw Zelensky with Starmer yesterday on Downing Street.
Peter, you know me, I'm quite candid with these things, and in my humble view, there's been a flaw at the heart of all of these deals. The US assumption that they're going to just magic up a peace deal in exchange for Ukraine giving away some of its territory, I'm afraid there's a flawed assumption. Zelensky's been at pains to point out since day one he doesn't have the authority to give land away. He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't have the constitutional right to do it. And of course, you know, what message does this send any aggressor that if you invade a sovereign country, you're going to be rewarded by being granted parcels of land? So actually, I think the US peace deal needs to go straight back to square one. First principles, Ukraine is not going to relinquish territory. It's the wrong thing to do. And I'm afraid that there is a flaw at the heart of it that needs to be rethought.
So what does the end of the war actually look like, or should it look like in your estimation, James? Because there are so many people who seem, I don't want to use the word content, but certainly think it reasonable that this war has gone on for such a long time. Nobody wants war, of course they don't, and we don't want there to be a conflict in Ukraine, and Russia has been a dreadful aggressor. Putin is an evil man. How does it end? How should it end?
It's an impossible question to answer. We've got conflicts around the world that have been raging for decades. I think that ultimately the war cannot end with territory being granted to Putin. That would be completely the wrong message to send. Zelensky can't sell that to his people, and nor should Trump be selling it to Putin. Aggression and dictatorship must not be rewarded. But by the same token, the US doesn't want to keep providing weapons. It's costing a fortune. It's costing a fortune to European nations. Will it become survival of the fittest? You know, will it be who blinks first? Will it be a case of whichever nation just degrades the other's capability first? I mean, you look at what's happening to infrastructure. You look at the sort of the damage to civilian infrastructure. I mean, I read today that there's an estimated 67 or 70,000 Ukrainian casualties, but that pales into insignificance compared to 900,000 alleged Russian dead or wounded. I mean, these are extraordinary figures, and by historical standards, these are extraordinary. Will it be a case of Putin being taken out by his own people? Will it be a case of the Russian parliament saying enough is enough? Will it be a case of the Russian economy squealing too much, under real pressure at the moment? So I'm afraid it's impossible to predict which way this is going to go. I suspect that we're going to end up with some sort of attritional conflict falling on the lines that have been gained so far territorially, but Zelensky is not going to want to give away that territory.
It's very interesting, I found, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I wonder what your reading of the fact is that Zelensky has been chatting to all sorts of people, including the leaders of Ireland, which are basically a neutral country, not a NATO member, but a member of the EU. I wonder if there is something in that, where you have Ukraine not as a member of NATO, but as a member of the EU, some form of country like Ireland in regard to international affairs. Could that be some step towards peace, do you think?
Well, I think it's right for Zelensky to court political favour, to court support. I mean, don't forget the UN has a voice here. Ireland's a member of the UN. So beyond the EU, beyond NATO, we've got the UN as a possible umbrella for putting pressure on Putin. But we know he likes to ignore the UN as well. I mean, it could be a case of Zelensky reaching out and saying, we need money, we need support. He could be going to neutral countries and saying, we need money, we need support. But I think it's entirely reasonable that there is an aspiration for Ukraine to become a member of NATO. We know it's going to happen at some point. And why not the EU as well? I mean, if you look at geographically where it is, I mean, you know, Ukraine has a border with Poland. I mean, Ukraine is just to the east. People in the UK might find it difficult to conceive of the fact that Ukraine is not far away. It's nearer than Bosnia. And look how, you know, we intervened in Bosnian affairs
that's a fair point.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I think that this is on our doorstep. We've got to take it seriously. And I think Zelensky is absolutely right to be courting as much political support as he can.
Thank you very much, James. Appreciate that. That's James Sunderland there, military expert, former MP as well, and former colonel in the army as well. So thank you to him. And that is Keir Starmer sending his deepest sympathy and condolences to the family of the member of the UK Armed Forces killed in a tragic accident while observing the testing of a new defensive capability in Ukraine. Rob asks, what are we trying to achieve with MI5 and the alleged informer? There's much that the public do need to know when keeping us all safe. Let's just remember who the IRA actually were and what they're responsible for. Yeah, that's fine, Rob. I totally get that. The big report out today into what Freddie Scappaticci steak knife did, I think is a terrible indictment of the fact that, yes, you do need informers, but the fact is MI5 and the army covered up for what he did. It's a really, really interesting topic, actually, and there are some really good documentaries about it online. Steak knife, not steak as in the meat, but S-T-A-K-E knife. It's worth looking into. It's a very, very interesting and very murky affair. Thank you to Kat in Stockport, who says, Mass, during the pandemic, we're not to provide absolute protection to the individual, but to contribute to reduce the transmission rate across the population. It elongates the time someone could be in proximity with an infected person, not eliminates the rest. Further masks are useful to prevent viruses like flu transmitted by water droplet. Here, the size of the virus is less important, says Kat in Stockport. We heard, of course, what Professor Carol Sikora said about that earlier. Leslie says, surely if Steak Knife has info on IRA members that can be named and brought to justice like the veterans are. Well, Steak Knife, Freddie Scappaticci, is dead, Leslie, but certainly there are many, many members of the IRA who have lots of information. There are politicians too who have information that they could put out there in the public domain that they could give to the authorities, and they do not, to bring truth and justice to victims of the IRA and other paramilitaries as well, of course. Andrea in Cornwall says, with regards to people starting to wear face masks again, my mum had a hospital appointment today in Stoke-on-Trent and the staff are wearing face masks. You think they would know better than anyone how pointless they are. Love your show, so glad you're back. I really missed you, says Andrea. Thank you, that's a really lovely thing to say. Thank you. Susan says, good grief, Peter, I used to have a small business, 50 employees, we never had a full complement of staff. With this new policy, this is the idea that you would give someone a week off for a distant relative dying, I would probably be permanently short-staffed, says Susan. In a production line, this is the death knell, says Susan. Robbie says, I don't want someone who's going to hunt down these scumbags, and I don't want someone who's not going to hunt down these scumbags, and that's the right word. I've heard Samantha Smith. I'm 100% positive we have to hunt down even the social workers, police, councillors and mayors who were involved in covering up the grooming gangs in a scandal. So thank you to Robbie for that. And one more just before the break on from Nick in Southampton. Christianity you cannot force on people. However, Britishness in my mind was politeness, giving way on pavements, escalators, holding a door open. Respect is what we are missing. Not different ethnicities, but everyone. This is what we are now missing in my lovely country. Illegal immigration does not help. Different culture entirely, no respect whatsoever. Just give, says Nick in Southampton. We're going to find out what is in the Sun tomorrow. We'll speak to John Lucas, who is the night news editor. He'll be with us in just a second. We'll take more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes in just a few minutes as well. Stay with us here on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch, including David, who says, I sold my house, I bought a motorhome because Britain is lost right now, listening from northern Spain. I hate what Labour is doing to our country, and I detest Starmer and his cronies can only do 90 days here, so when I'm back I'll campaign to get rid of this awful government. It is Reform UK or bust for me, says David, who's in the Basque country. Grant in Edinburgh says, I'm a lorry driver. I often still see people driving their cars wearing masks, even when alone in their car, so the government scared some of these sheep people so much during COVID. Grant, I think that's a very good point. I remember hearing from, I mean, in their car, that's ludicrous. I remember hearing from a friend of mine about someone who was climbing a mountain by himself and had a mask on. I mean, come on. Crazy. Anyway, let's talk about what is in the Sun tomorrow. John Lucas is here, the Night News editor. Hi, John.
Hello.
You well?
Yeah, very well. Yourself?
Yes, very well indeed. Tell us about Hugh Edwards.
Well, yeah, someone who maybe should be wearing a mask over his entire face so that we don't have to see him again, let alone his re-emergence onto social media. So we had the story today, Hugh Edwards, who the Sun exposed before for being for inappropriately messaging young men and colleagues and so on. As a result of our reporting, it was later found that he had these disgusting child abuse images on his phone, and the Sun took a lot of flack at the time. The initial reporting on Hugh Edwards, if you remember, it all had to be anonymised to start with. Lots of Hugh's colleagues and supporters, claimed it was a witch hunt, and we were, fully vindicated at the end, because it turns out he's an absolutely vile, arrogant, shameless man. Anyway, he's posted a new moody, brooding-looking picture on his Facebook, and he's also, we've found today, he's resurrected his Instagram account, and he's again calling himself a journalist and broadcaster, which suggests perhaps he's planning some sort of comeback. The incredible thing is, despite it, and if you go back and read the court stories, you'll see that he had the worst of the worst images on his phone.
And yeah, they were the category A images.
Category A, and if you know what that means, it's literally, it's the worst type of...
Well, the kind of stuff we can't actually talk about at 2027. You can't imagine it. No. He is the man with no shame.
He is, but the incredible thing is, since relaunching his social media, he's garnered 400 extra friends on here, and many of them being quite supportive, and they include, when you go through and look at who they are, there are ex-BBC guys on there. I won't name them now, but we've named them in the paper. It's fine. I mean, they put it on their own Facebooks.
Yeah, it's public. Yeah.
You've got priests, you've got other broadcasters and public figures openly supporting Hugh, and it's unbelievable. We've had victims groups on saying, a chap from a group called Freedom from Abuse said, look, this is what abusers do. They get a posse of friends around them, and it helps to discredit the victims, and these people should be ashamed of themselves. Yeah. And look, I mean, hopefully, if he was plotting some sort of comeback, he might read the room.
Well, I don't think it get too far. Yeah. But it is. You're absolutely right. The fact that anybody is giving him credence is horrendous, given what everything that has been revealed. Tell us about the Gaza Metro.
Yes, well, this conflict in Gaza is quieting down. It's not fully over. There's still, casualties every day, ceasefire, I don't know if you call them a breach, but, incidents happening. But journalists are able to go into Gaza now and look around, and we've been over there. Robin Perry, who's our chief foreign correspondent, has been there with the IDF today, and they've been able to go down and look into some of these tunnels where the hostages from the October 7th attack were kept. Many of them died in these tunnels, and it's quite incredible. We've got a big write-through in the paper, but also online we've got a really good video package which will show you just how cramped and also difficult to breathe it is under there. Very dusty, very low oxygen, and
they're so elaborate as well. It's huge. I mean, this labyrinth of tunnels, hundreds of miles beneath Gaza. It was set up specifically for the 7th of October and for many other reasons, but that's the main one. And it shows the evil of Hamas.
That's it. I mean, and it's a great. It was a $1 billion endeavour. to construct these tunnels. They sort of nickname it the Gaza Metro, and that's because it really does run all underneath that territory. And obviously the big tragedy is right underneath all these civilian areas. And we know, look, there's no doubt about it, that the UN has said 75% of the buildings across Gaza have been destroyed or damaged.
Yeah.
In some districts it's 100%. And obviously there's a huge human tragedy. It's not just about buildings behind it, but and I think people do sometimes willingly ignore this fact. These tunnels, as you say, they're built for the purposes of conflict, and they're right underneath civilian areas. So,
hospitals and schools.
And hospitals and schools. So it has inevitably led to, a horrible toll on the civilian population there. But it's a very good sort of package. Getting right into these tunnels, having a look, and we'll be able to retell some of the hostages' stories as well.
I look forward to seeing that. It'll be really, really fascinating and horrifying. Let's put a smile on our face and talk about poor little Oscar Wilkins. He was given the role of Elvis the Elf in the production at his primary school, but he took more Elvis than Elf out of that instruction, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I love this because I just saw. My little lad had his first nativity yesterday, and very proud of him, of Leonard doing that, and it was great. There wasn't much.
Well done, Leonard.
Yeah, he was a star, so there wasn't literally. He was the North Star or whatever it is, Star of Bethlehem. That's it.
Yeah.
But this lad, Oscar Wilkins. So he's supposed to be Elvis the Elf. Very happy. Goes home, tells mum and dad. They say, "What are you in the school play?" Says, "Oh, I'm Elvis." And and you need to get a costume. Okay, right. So what he didn't add was his Elvis the Elf.
He didn't put the Elf, no, he just said, I'm Elvis.
Yeah, so he's turned up Monday morning, looking fantastic, I've got to say, when you see the picture, the guy. But he's in a full Elvis sort of Las Vegas style.
Brilliant.
And he's got the hair and everything. And the picture's great because all his little mates, they're all just elves, and he literally is Elvis. But he didn't bother him, and everyone enjoyed it.
I have a confession in that I have a second cousin once removed. He's called Elvis.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah,
That's a good name.
Elvis Tong, or as I call him, King Tong. He's pretty awesome little guy actually. But yeah, he probably should have mentioned the elf element there to that. Tell us about Miss Bum Bum.
Miss Bum Bum. Well, I don't know how familiar you are with this competition. So
I haven't entered it myself, I must say.
No.
For a number of reasons, must be said.
Yeah. Look, Miss Bum Bum is Brazil's biggest beauty pageant, and the current champion, Kerele Chavez, she is really fed up. She's the subject of all these jibes online, calling her stupid, and she's caused quite a stir in Brazil, coming out and saying, look, just because I've got the country's best bum, there's more to me than that. So she doesn't want to be known as dumb. She wants to doesn't want to be known as dumb just because she's got
less dumb, more bum.
Yeah, so it's good. It's caused a big stir in Brazil. It's a little bit of fun, and Bum Bum. There's a few Bum Bum.
Do you by any chance in the paper tomorrow have a large picture of her posterior?
Well, I mean, I think some. It's not too large.
Okay.
But it's there's a good picture.
You won't be entering though. You don't fancy a crack at it.
Very good.
Okay. John, we'll leave it there. John Lucas is the Night News editor at The Sun. Thank you very much. All those stories in the paper tomorrow and indeed online at thesun.co.uk. We'll take more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes right up to 7 o'clock. Kevin O'Sullivan will be here after the 7 o'clock news. We'll hopefully have a chat with him as well about what's coming up on his programme. Stay with us here on Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Dave has reacted to what Samantha was saying earlier on. She is the rape gang survivor. Dave in Bristol says, amazing, articulate, inspiring interview, the rape gang survivor Samantha, and someone who can obviously see through the gaslighting surrounding this inquiry, destined in the opinion of many people to not get to the truth, identify those who both took part in the scandal, covered it up, or just turned a blind eye or throw a light on the communities who are at the root of the concern of community unrest. If such an inquiry should uncover unpleasant truths, it will also cost a huge amount of money for little result. As for the chairwoman, so she will stand down as a Labour member of the House of Lords. So what? Your politics and what you believe does not change automatically because you call yourself independent. Whitewash, smoke and mirrors, says Dave in Bristol. I want to speak to Elizabeth in Chorley, who's rung in about that interview as well. Elizabeth, you're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for the call on 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say?
I would like to say what a sparkling young woman Samantha is.
Totally agree.
She is an example of the toughest of the tough. And she needs to carry on with her message throughout all this. But what I would say is, I know that all these people that are obfuscating and there's no inquiry, then there is an inquiry, then there's not an inquiry, they're appointing different people.
Yeah.
It is to preserve their position. And if they think their position is more important than these young lives, they need to be gone.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, Elizabeth. I mean, do you think we're going to get proper answers here? Are things going to change, is my question.
No. I do not think so for 1 minute. I've followed this for absolutely ages, years. And I know that in Oldham, Rochdale, various places in the north, not very far from where I live, children's commissioners and people that were involved with the children's
services,
council and social workers, they were abusers. And the police turned a blind eye.
Yeah, it's just a dreadful thing, and it's still ongoing, Elizabeth, as well. That's the even worse thing. You know, Keir Starmer talked about it being a historical thing. It's not. It's going on right now. Thank you for that call, Elizabeth. I really appreciate it, and thank you to this person as well who has texted in to say, "Evening, Peter, great programme. I'm in tears here listening to the very beautiful, educated, articulate Samantha. I feel heartbroken. She has been subjected to such abhorrent crimes only to be further insulted by the very people who are in positions of trust. As a mother and grandmother, I cannot imagine my actions if something happened to my family." Karen in Fife says, Peter, hope you're well. Thank you, Karen. I'm very well. Hope you are too. I hadn't discovered the brilliant Talk channel until after the COVID pandemic, and as such relied on the output of mainstream media, who in my opinion were pushing the whole mask wearing narrative and other restrictions without questioning, says Karen. I was gullible in believing everything I heard for the last 3 years. I now know differently. Well, thank you, Karen. I'm not sure whether we're mainstream media or not. I think perhaps we are to some degree, but certainly we tell the truth as we see it, and we don't go along with the narrative. We aren't carried along for the ride. We ask questions that and say things that other people don't. Sue in Essex says, regarding Xmas, surely it's called Xmas because of the birth of Christ, so all these people wiping Xmas from everything are wiping away the very basis of our religion. No, I disagree with that. I think, Sue, that really Christ is part of Christmas and should be in the name of Christmas. There are no other festivals that I can think of that change their name simply because people don't want to say the word Christ. But thank you for that, Sue. It is illegal to openly display a cross or crucifix in Saudi, says this person, and try finding a church, but we have dozens of mosques and are apparently intolerant. Annie in Bridgend says, good afternoon, Peter. Your caller, Mark, earlier on, absolutely right. Many people bang their drum and say this is a Christian country and other faiths and religions should not be taking over. The only way that won't happen is if people put bums on seats in churches. I believe it is too late, and it's only a matter of years before Christianity will be replaced by minority religion. Our king is the defender of the faith here. I wonder if the monarchy will disappear when this happens. Adrian Baird at Buckhurst Hill. Adrian, I haven't heard from you in a while. I hope you're well. Why do you expect either Jess Phillips or Yvette Cooper to act differently, says Adrian? After all, we've had the waspy women used as a political convenience. We've been lied about taxes, especially the promise not to increase council tax. And then there was that promise about a reduction of energy bills. No new taxes on working people. Gangs were going to be smashed. Jury trials were going to be abolished. Oops, they didn't say that, did they? Says Adrian. All good points there. And Ian in Essex says, I'm 68. I've never been so fed up with this country and the government that just doesn't get it. It's really depressing. I genuinely fear for my granddaughter's future. Let's be fair, it's rubbish and getting worse, says Ian. Tim is in Surrey and has some thoughts on the teacher who has been told he can't teach children because he told them that Britain is a Christian country. Tim, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, good evening, Peter. I'm incandescent with rage. The treatment of that teacher who, as you have said, merely imparted facts. The United Kingdom is a Christian country and has been for well over 1,000 years. That is a fact. It's not an opinion.
Yeah.
How
no,
should...
And it is ludicrous that... Well, it's ludicrous, Tim, that someone is admonished simply for stating facts.
But this is every day now. There is something that is dreamt up in this sort of we are gaslit every day.
It is just ludicrous, Tim.
At some level, and it's driving me mad.
Well, I agree with you, and I hear your anger, and I hear your annoyance, and your frustration at this as well, because this is such a straightforward thing, and rightly, the Free Speech Union is involved in this guy's case. Listen, thanks for your call, Tim. I really appreciate it. That's Tim in Surrey there. On the other side of the news, Kevin O'Sullivan will be here. Kevin, you're very welcome. What would you like to tell us about what's coming up in your programme?
You'll get there in the end.
Get there in the end.
Yes, obviously we're going to cover the Afghani rape trial.
Horrendous detail.
We've got a problem there. We really do have. There are 70,000 Afghani migrants here, and it is a statistical fact that men from Afghanistan are 22 times more likely to commit sex crimes than British citizens. We have a problem. We have to confront it. Also, there are 170 terrorists, serious terrorists and extremists living in this country who we tried to deport, but we can't because of their human rights.
Yeah,
we have to monitor them 24/7. It's costing us a fortune. 170 people. Also, we're going to cover the story of Urbach, a lovely town to the south of Frankfurt. So there's been the most horrific attack on their Christmas market, really horrible. They attacked and tortured 2 donkeys, punching them in the face, went to a church, desecrated it with human waste.
Dreadful.
It's really... So why in Germany especially, people seem to want to attack Christmas, and we'll be looking into that. Also, Hugh Edwards is staging or allegedly staging some kind of comeback. It's not going to happen. It won't work because people don't forgive paedophiles, quite rightly. But all these BBC people who have gone onto Facebook and said, "God, good on you, Hugh. The way the BBC treated you was terrible.
Disgusting.
Good luck with your looking good, Hugh." He's a child sex